101. It's time. Harry Crow disclaimer JKR owns all things Harry Potter Chapter 101. Quidditch fever had once more gripped Hogwarts. The last two round-robin matches had been contested over the previous weekends, resulting in this Saturday's final being between Slytherin and Durmstrang, with Victor and Draco being part of the large group of friends enjoying lunch that Monday. The conversation was never going to stay away from Quidditch for long. So, Harry, will you be coming to Vatch the final on Saturday? I am looking forward to playing against Draco. Surely you could miss training for just one day to Vatch your friends compete. We will be missing training this weekend, Victor, but won't be spending that time watching Quidditch. Tonks thinks we have been overdoing the training this term and has ordered us to have a weekend of rest before I have the final task next week. To us, the best place to rest is on my island. We'll be leaving for there right after our potions class on Friday. Since Tonks is still on protection detail, she and Remus are coming too. This drew a quip from Padma, wanting to divert attention away for the real reason behind their trip. We're not sure whether Tonks is just saying we need a rest so she and Remus can have a holiday too. As Neville and I are included as well, we really don't care. There's no way we would refuse a weekend in the Maldives. Sorry, Victor, no Quidditch match can live up to that. Pansy was quick to confirm she agreed with Palmer's assessment. Too true. Even with Draco playing, I'd still rather be on Harry's island. Her comments even found agreement from her seeker boyfriend. Pansy in her bikini or Victor in his Quidditch robes is no contest for me either. If there are any spare invitations going, you could count Pansy and me in too. This was something they wanted to nip in the bud. Hermione got in first. Sorry, Draco. The idea is for us to get away and forget about everything for the weekend. Victor could hardly believe his ears. This must be some island, Harry. The Bulgarian was quickly assured it was by anyone sitting there who had visited it. Also wanting to divert attention away from this weekend, Hermione made an on-the-spot decision. We held a birthday party for these two there last year. I think we should do the same again this summer, and everyone sitting here is invited. You'll then be able to make your own mind up, Victor. While this delighted everyone, it also opened an unexpected can of worms. It was Morag who set the ball rolling. Have you made holiday plans for this summer yet? Looking around their friends, told the four this was something that had been getting discussed. Susan, Hannah, and Luna were all now staring at their plates in embarrassment, something Harry was never going to stand for. I'm really sorry, everyone. All four of us have gotten so wrapped up in our training that we haven't made any plans for summer. Whatever our plans are, though, we'll want to spend some of that summer with our friends and family. I think we should organize a family meeting for the following weekend. We can all sit down and plan our summer from there. Looking on as Luna, Susan, and Hannah all broke into smiles was actually painful to watch. Harry could only hope they forgave him for not including them in the loop. Parvati, Pansy, and Draco's expressions were rather strained, all three just hoping the entire family were available to sit down that weekend to plan their summer. Trying to keep the good mood going, Hermione made a point of letting Fleur and Victor know they were certainly classed as friends, and they would be planning to see them at some point over the summer. With a joint birthday party on a tropical island to look forward to, and the distinct possibility some of them would also be included in further holiday plans, talk of Quidditch actually took a back seat for the rest of the day. Blaise had noticed his betrothed flinch during the holiday conversations, but waited until it was just the two of them to talk with Parvati about it. Do you want to tell me what's going on? There was all that talk of holidays, yet you appeared as if that was nothing but bad news. You love those holidays. I know, and I'm really looking forward to them this year. I can't tell you any more, Blaise. It's not my secret to tell. I promise you this, though. You will know everything before that family meeting, and also be included in it. After watching the arse Colin had made of himself with Luna regarding the Animagi incident, Blaise was certain this was the same scenario here. He was also certain the same players would once more be center stage, and had no intention of forcing Parvati's hand on this one. Can you at least tell me that these concerns are to do with your sister, and have nothing to do with our betrothal? A passionate kiss later, and Blaise's last question had been answered. He was also smart enough to figure out what was going on. Between all the training those four put in and the event that was scheduled to take place between these 2 weekends, his as yet unanswered question just became a lot clearer. I'll be right beside you during the third task. Thanks for understanding, Blaze, and I have this terrible feeling I'll really need you to be right beside me on that day. With Crow's marauders taking place that evening, the couple spent a quiet few hours alone together contemplating just what the future might hold. With the summer now well and truly upon them, Emma and Dan were enjoying the Highland sunshine by taking Jamie down to the playground. This was one of the parts Harry had insisted be left after the fair, and although the carousels, puppet shows, and all the other forms of entertainment were now gone, it was still a well-used facility. Both had gotten used to meeting the other parents, as they too used the playground for their children, and Jamie certainly enjoyed sitting on a blanket with a couple of his goblin friends who were also too young for the swings and such. Harry would be delighted to know his Kingussie estate was becoming a real community. It wasn't too difficult to imagine Astrid Black sitting on that blanket, along with Jamie and their little goblin friends, while the parents all sat having a chat in the sunshine. Even thinking about her other children nearly had the tears flowing for Emma. She and Dan both knew Hermione would do absolutely anything to fight by Harry's side and help keep him safe. They also recognized that, although Harry probably didn't want Hermione anywhere near this fight, they would certainly be safer together. Neither she nor Dan were too bothered about this weekend their children had planned. Both knew what would be happening during that weekend, but how could you complain when Harry was whisking her off to a beautiful tropical island? It was only a few months before Hermione could do so legally, and this time next summer they would all be embroiled in planning their wedding. What had reduced Emma to sobs was Bartchoke informing them Harry and Hermione had made their wills. There was certainly no comfort from knowing Jamie would be the main beneficiary. The very thought of them needing to write their last will and testaments was far more terrifying than any hang-ups over them losing their virginities to each other, something that was always going to happen anyway. The mother in Emma was struggling with the decision that would put both Harry and Hermione in deadly danger. No amount of logical explanations would change that. She could only pray the five of them came through this unscathed. Emma simply couldn't contemplate any other scenarios. Another family were also enjoying the Scottish sunshine, though there were certainly no goblins within sight of the Flannan Isles. This was a very special day for the family. Marvolo Rookwood was now 1 year old. Augustus had risked a late-night raid on a Muggle store to make this day special for his son. They even had cake and a few toys as presents. Their master wasn't one for sitting out in the sun, so it was left to just the three of them to enjoy Marvolo's special day. Since delivering the portkey to Umbridge, their only task left to accomplish was to kill the boy on the 24th, now only 9 days away. Augustus would have to say that his time spent here, this last year especially, was the happiest of his life. He had always thought his chances of having a loving wife and family were at best a pipe dream. Now he, Augustus Rookwood, had a stunningly beautiful wife and the most wonderful son imaginable. While he now thought their chances of pulling this off next week were good, Augustus certainly drew comfort from knowing that their son would be found if anything happened to Bella and him. Watching as Marvolo took his first teetering steps in this world, Augusta thought their boy deserved a better life than hiding out on this remote island. One thing Augustus was sure of: by next weekend, Marvolo would begin that journey to a better life. Could only hope it was Bella and him who led their son to this promise of a better life. Harry was leading them off the castle grounds when they came across Parvati and Pansy waiting on them. Hugs were exchanged before the six left the Hogwarts grounds and portkeyed away. I suppose I should be jealous, knowing how they are going to be spending this weekend. Then I remember what they're facing on Thursday, and any jealousy gets its arse well and truly kicked. When Blaze and I have our first time together, I don't want it to be because we might both be dead by the following weekend. Seeing the tears running down Parvati's cheeks, Pansy soon had her arm around her friend. Draco and I are in the same position. Sometimes I wish we didn't know what was happening. Oh no, that's much worse. I've tried that, and your imagination can paint all different pictures of what's really going on. It's much better to know the truth. While offering comfort to Parvati, Pansy couldn't really agree with that analogy. Perhaps it was because she couldn't think of anything worse than to willingly face the people who had tortured her father to death. The six found themselves facing three chalets with the lights on, and the path from the beach lit so they could make their way safely to their accommodation. Going from the long summer day at Hogwarts to night in the Maldives took a moment to acclimatize their eyes to. Sensing their nervousness, Tonks broke the awkward silence. Well, I don't know about anyone else, but I thought that was a bloody long week. I plan on spending a nice quiet evening with Wolfie here. I'm sure you four will be able to keep yourselves entertained. We'll take the middle chalet. That lets me do my job of keeping you lot safe better. With that, she dragged Remus away. Padma was glad it was dark so no one could see how much she was blushing. She grabbed her mate's hand and started dragging Neville off to the chalet on the extreme left of the row. Harry offered Hermione his arm as they headed right. He soon changed that to his arm being around her waist as he could feel his mate tremble. They entered the chalet, and Hermione could see Harry had thought of everything. There was soft music playing in the background, and there was a candlelit table set for a romantic dinner for two. Hermione hadn't come here to eat, though. Harry, this is beautiful and so thoughtful. If you don't take me into the bedroom right away, though, I'm going to rip that shirt right off you, and we'll end up on the floor. Or Hermione, I like this shirt. Harry then found himself lost for words, as he could see the lust reflected in Hermione's eyes. Wanting to let her know he felt exactly the same way, he ripped his own shirt right off and threw it away. Harry obviously got it right, because Hermione launched herself at him, her hands wandering everywhere while their lips were locked. Without breaking their kiss, Harry lovingly scooped her up into his arms and headed for the bedroom. Their relationship had slowly progressed to the point where there would be no embarrassment tonight, just natural concern that they could each make the experience as pleasurable as possible for the other. It was understandable, then, that both had their attention on other things, neither noticing the golden glow radiating out the room at the exact moment their bond completed. Uo Henrika found Sirius standing beside their daughter's cot. His gaze never shifted from Astrid, and tears were slowly running down his cheeks. She wrapped her arms around her husband, not even needing to ask the question. Sirius, though, wanted to say what was on his mind. I feel oh so blessed, love. Having you and our wonderful daughter in my life are more than I ever though possible, probably more than I deserve. That same life has taught me, though things are always in balance, there will be a price to pay for this happiness. I just can't shake this horrible feeling that the price is going to be paid on Thursday by some of our family. I love every single one of those teens, and Tonks is not only family, but married to my best friend. Not being able to do anything is killing me. I don't know how their patents are coping with this. I just look at our little Astrid, and I'm the blubbing wreck you found standing here. Gently kissing her emotional husband, Henrika understood at once what the problem was here. Sirius was worried he was failing his godson, his family, and by extension their daughter. Both Astrid's godparents would be right in the middle of this. Using your own balance system, did it never occur to you those scales of life were overdue to swing in a positive direction for my wonderful husband? I know you've had a shitty life, love, and are struggling to accept you should be this happy. You are a loving husband, wonderful father, and Harry thinks you're the best godfather on the planet. After him and Neville, of course. We've done everything we can. Now all that's left to do is support the members of our family as best we can. Between now and Thursday, during that entire day and after too, we'll all need each other. Sirius, arms snaked around his beautiful wife. I'll need you way past Thursday. I need you every day for the rest of my life. Well, it's a good job you married me then, because I'm not going anywhere. Mum and Dad are arriving tomorrow too, supposedly to watch the Quidditch, but they'll be staying in Scotland until after the third task. What do you say about having an early night and trying to make them grandparents twice over? I would say that's a wonderful idea. Sirius' thoughts wandered for a moment before he told his wife where they had gone. You know, I don't think any of the family would mind if those girls came back from that island pregnant. As long as they come back from this fight on Thursday, they will be forgiven for just about anything. I agree, but there's no chance of that happening. Tonks made sure the entire situation was taken care of for all three of them. This puzzled Sirius. I thought Tonks wanted a family. Oh, she does. Stop and think for a moment, though. If she found herself pregnant, There isn't a chance in hell either Remus or Harry would let her anywhere near this fight. When this is finally over, you might not see Remus for quite a while. Tonks has a fair bit of leave stacked up from the last 2 years, and I can't see Amelia turning down her request to use it. Tonks intends to be pregnant before the new term starts in September. This actually coaxed a smile from Sirius. Remus is indeed going to be busy. I seem to remember you mentioning it was time we got busy ourselves. Let's go and see if we can come up with a little sister or brother for our Astrid. They left their sleeping daughter's room, Henrika thinking her mission was accomplished. Sirius was certainly in a better frame of mind than when she first entered. Due to the unprecedented circumstances, his friends didn't want Barchuk to be celebrating the completion of his son and daughter's bond alone. Since this would usually occur the same evening as the couple's bonding, the parents would normally still be at the celebrations. Ragnar, Sharpshard, Pitsley, and the proud father all shared tankards of grog as Hermione officially became Barchok's daughter, a citizen of the nation and the new Lady Potter. As with all events like this, reminiscing was at the forefront of their minds. It doesn't seem that long ago he was just a little bundle being deposited on my desk. Now he's married his mate. I called him Crow, and he used cunning that bird would be proud of to turn that back on me. Had I known then what we know now, I would probably have called him Amir. The director was halted from saying any more by Barchok's loud laughter. It took him a moment to recover before the ambassador could answer his three friends. I'm sorry, but you would find that as funny as I did if you knew more about the Muggles. Their queen has a grandson called Prince Harry. This did indeed set the other three off laughing. The quantities of grog being consumed might have had something to do with that, though. Pitsley offered his opinion. Your son truly is a prince, Barchok. He also chooses his friends as wisely as he picked his mate. They are such a force for positive change that Gringotts has already progressed beyond where I had even dared to dream was possible. Sharpshard's sentiment was of a completely different kind. He was well named Crow. The name for a group of them is a murder. That's what it will be on Thursday. We'll murder these honorless, child-killing cowards where they stand before they can hurt anyone else. And then I intend to be drunk for a week. I don't think the nation has such a grog reserve, old friend. Barchok still raised his glass, though, and toasted with the rest of them to that. That wonderful outcome might see Barchok drunk for a week too. It wasn't the first time Harry had woken with Hermione in his arms. It was the first time, though, doing so while both of them were naked. Just thinking of last night saw his arms tighten even more around his mate, causing Hermione to make a noise similar to that of a contented moonlight. He kissed the top of her head as Hermione snuggled in even more, if that was possible. I could get used to waking up like this for the rest of my life. Only one more summer to go, Hermione, then that's exactly what will happen. I hate to say this, love, but I think we need to get up. Harry, you mention us both needing a shower. I swear you'll be sleeping in the other room tonight. I was looking forward to washing your hair too. Unless you intend to spend the entire weekend in this chalet, we should get up and ready for our run. There was a moment of silence while Hermione considered her options. Staying in this chalet is a very attractive option. Looking at his naked mate, Harry certainly agreed with that. But we still have to face people. A run and then breakfast with everyone sounds good. How about an afternoon siesta, though? I knew you were the brains here. That sounds wonderful. So does getting my hair washed in the shower. Let's go. Meeting Padma and Neville could have been awkward, but both girls grabbed each other by the hand and then raced ahead, leaving Harry and Neville no choice but to follow on. There was no awkwardness between the boys either. They may have ran in silence, but the shit-eating grin Neville was wearing told everyone he was very happy with his life at the moment. The occasional bout of giggles coming from the girls meant they were being discussed, but again Neville just smiled at Padma as if she was an angel who'd fallen to earth just for him. They must have run over a mile before Neville broke the comfortable silence. Harry, we are the two luckiest blokes on the planet. There was no argument coming from Harry on that subject, yet he recognized that his brother in all but blood had more to say. I'm not scared anymore, Harry. Oh sure, I'm still frightened of what could happen when we face these bastards, but I'm not scared anymore. Padma did that. She made a man of me in more ways than just the obvious. My journey started when we first met. You offered me your hand in friendship, and introduced me to the most wonderful witch in the world. I'm trying to say thanks, Harry, for everything. Nev, are we lucky? Hell yes. Do you need to thank me for anything? Absolutely not. Friendship and family is a two-way thing. You've more than held up your end of the bargain. His smile might not be able to widen any further, but Neville nodded in acknowledgement and thanks. Hermione thought this weekend would show us what our future held and make us all fight harder to make that future come true. As usual, my beautiful mate was right. Next summer, those two become our wives, and I will do absolutely anything to ensure that happens. I don't give a shit whether it's a magical spell, goblin steel, or a muggle bullet that puts Voldemort down, just as long as the bastard goes down. Hermione taught me that. We really are lucky. The two witches must have finished their conversation as, with a jump that didn't even break their stride, Hover and Saber took to the air. Buff and Swift were right behind them as they flew around the island in formation. Tonks was delighted she won her bet. Told you, Wolfie, not only are they exercising as usual, but will be over here for breakfast. Puts that supposed werewolf stamina of yours to shame. You didn't get out of bed for 2 days. Remus kissed the teasing witch. I didn't get out of bed because a certain aura wouldn't let me, and I thought my legendary stamina more than proved itself over those 2 days. That it did, lover, that it did. Now, I need you to lock your marauder side away. You will not tease any of these 4 today. Oh, you're spoiling all my fun. Be a good little Wolfie, and I promise to make it up to you later. You can tease me as much as you want. A kiss later, and their bargain was sealed. Ooh, the Quidditch matches at Hogwarts were proving to be incredibly popular, with today being the final, and Victor Crumb playing for Durmstrang against Slytherin. Dolores chose this time to make her move. Since she was effectively breaking into her old department, the Department of Magical Games and Sports, Dolores couldn't think of a better opportunity to carry out her task. Armed with the Dark Lord's portkey and her cover story, she was pleasantly surprised to discover the department was totally deserted. She had a small chuckle to herself at the irony of the situation. The department was empty because they were all away watching the Quidditch, a match that wouldn't be taking place at all if it wasn't for Crow's interference. Dolores savored the delicious thought that Crow was playing a part in his own downfall, and that now there was no chance of her being linked to the kidnapping. Her revenge was going to be oh so sweet. She placed the plate with the names of the past winners carefully on the base of the cup, a sticking charm making it appear as if it had always been there. Activating the portkey caused the entire cup to glow for a second. After that, Dolores' scans couldn't read any magical signature from the trophy. Having ridden her luck, Dolores got out of there as quickly as she could. Dolores was quite proud of herself for accomplishing what was another difficult task. Now all that she had left to do was look forward to Thursday and practice a concerned expression for when the goblin lover was whisked away from the stadium. Not as easy as it sounded, since Dolores would really be wanting to stand up and cheer. Ooh, even those not close to the fore could easily see the difference when they walked back into Hogwarts on Sunday evening. They appeared happy, refreshed, and now didn't look as if they had the weight of the world on their shoulders. Their friends would have to wait, though, as the quartet had bolted to greet their Swedish visitors, having not seen Moa or Lucas since Christmas. The two visitors were delighted to see the 4 looking so well, and would be able to pass on that news when they left Hogwarts for Kingassy after dinner. They would, of course, be returning to the castle with the rest of the family on Thursday. Taking their seats at the Ravenclaw table gave their friends time to catch up. Fleur summed up the feelings of all those not in the know. Mon dear, you look fantastic. Awry, you could make a fortune renting out Ziz Island if a weekend can do that. It was with a cheeky grin Hermione answered her. Fleur, we consider that island one of our homes. It's for family and friends only. Oh, and Harry already has a fortune. I think my lady is forgetting that is our fortune. A blushing Hermione was still smiling as she kissed her husband, the Potter ring having magically appeared on her finger after they completed their bond. Thankfully, like Harry's head of house ring, only people who knew about it would be able to see that magic now considered her Lady Potter. The couple were now considered married in 2 of the societies they inhabited. Their wedding next summer would complete the trilogy. While catching up, it didn't take long to discover that Victor had won the Quidditch tournament for Durmstrang. All of their Hogwarts friends, with the possible exception of Roger, were now hoping Harry would get his hands on the Triwizard Cup. None picked up on the involuntary shudder that passed through the four every time lifting that particular trophy was mentioned. Albus took particular care with dressing this morning. Today was the day he would return to his rightful place in magical society, and it was important he looked his best. That bastard crow slicing his beard off had called for an entire change of image. Instead of his flowing silver locks and beard, both were now neatly trimmed to make him look more like a warrior for the light, rather than the elder statesman his previous image projected. He had also avoided choosing some of his more outlandish and eccentric sets of robes, though deep purple with gold trimming couldn't really be classed as demure. Like Dolor's, he had also been practicing projecting a demure and heartbroken demeanor. Albus was sure he could even manage to shed a few tears over Crow's dead body. Knowing all eyes would be on him later, Albus checked his image one more time in the full-length mirror and was satisfied with what he saw reflected there. It was time to head to the stadium. Albus wanted a good seat. One way or another, this would end today. Fleur, and Victor were in the changing room, waiting not only on the third task starting, but also the third champion showing up. When he eventually arrived, Harry wasn't alone. Hermione, Padma, Neville, and Tonks all accompanied him. Victor recognized something was wrong right away. It was the expressions they wore. As a professional sportsman, he'd seen that intense concentration before. They had their game faces on, and someone was in deep trouble. He was pleased and relieved he managed to concentrate on their faces, since all wore skin-tight body armor that emphasized every curve of their bodies. Victor thought he was looking at three of the sexiest girls he had ever seen, and that was with a Veela in the room too, since two of them currently had razor-sharp swords strapped to their backs, and the third was an aura. Victor's restraint in not ogling them was understandable. Throw in Harry, Neville, and these girls were also friends of his, and it just couldn't happen. That didn't mean it was easy, though. It was the Veela amongst them who broke the stunned silence. What is going on, Rye? Are all of you competing? Fleur, Victor, I'm really sorry we couldn't tell you sooner. There is no third task. Vat, are you making Vith the joke? No, Victor, we're not joking. This is certainly not a laughing matter. It was Voldemort who arranged for my name to be put in that goblet. He wants me dead, and this is all part of his scheme. Voldemort thinks he's tricking me, but we've known every move he's made. I also want to assure you both that you were never in any danger throughout the tournament. Well, not from Voldemort at any rate. 3 of our fathers have been concealed in the stadium roof for every task, armed with guns that were a lot more accurate and powerful than the one I used in the last task. Had any of them appeared, they would have been cut down in seconds. This does not make sense, awry. Both ours and Victor's ministers of magic are currently explaining exactly what has been happening to Madame Maxime. They will be here shortly to confirm everything I've said. She will need to take her seat in the stadium because Voldemort has people helping him, and they're here today. Victor, one of them, is Dumbledore. This had the Bulgarian champion sitting down. Are you sure, Harry? Positive, though even Voldemort doesn't know that part. Umbridge was tasked with getting a sample of my blood. We think Dumbledore told her how to do that. Her personal elf stole my bloody towel after one of our morning practice sessions with our blades. It was a really bloody towel, since these 3 also bled on it. You knew, and still did this. Fleur, this has been handled at the highest levels of our governments. It's not just us against Voldemort. We all want this to end. Today is our chance. The cup has been transformed into a blood-bound portkey that will take me to Voldemort's trap. He doesn't know we're setting one for him. Again, I hope you can forgive me for keeping this from you. Fleur flew at Harry and had her arms wrapped protectively around her friend. You are ready to face Voldemort, but worried about what we think. You silly man. Do not worry about us. Just concentrate on what you are to do. As Fleur stepped back, Victor almost pushed her out the way in his haste to shake Harry by the hand. You have nothing to worry about with me. I want to go to Durmstrang's honor demands that I do. At that, Amelia entered with both ministers and Ragnarok. Mr. Crumb, we expect them to be trapped behind wards we will have to pull down. We would welcome wands we could trust to help with that task. She hardly got finished speaking when Fleur jumped in to add her name to that list too, raising a smile amongst the 4. They were sure the rest of their friends would understand too. All four bowed to Ragnar. The director was actually wearing armor. It would appear that he too was determined to be part of this fight today. Cornelius was shaking all their hands, but this was not the handshake of a politician. I swore I would stand beside you when you faced him, Harry. I'm here today to make good on my promise, along with every wand we can muster. Most of them don't really know what's happening yet, and won't until we announce it. Amelia also wanted to make sure there were no misunderstandings, though her instructions were simplicity itself. When you hear me scream, "Down," that's exactly what you do. Hit the ground immediately, because the stuff flying above your head will be lethal. Borislaw was shaking Victor's hand. We fight today to avenge our countrymen these bastards murdered at the Vorld Cup. The British have asked to deal with Dumbledore, and I agreed. We do not want him back in our country anyway. Durmstrangville have a new headmaster and deputy in September. Checking her watch, Amelia signaled to Cornelius. Minister, it's time. She then hugged the four teens and Tonks before the entire party headed out the dressing room to enter the stadium. Uo Albus wasn't listening to the inane banter coming from the commentator, nor was he too bothered that the third task appeared rather easy. He would surely have come up with something more challenging than a maze. No, his entire concentration was focused on the tunnel that would lead the champions from the dressing room into the stadium. This was why he was totally surprised when someone sat next to him. Albus, Albus, I told you to return to Bulgaria and forget about Harry. You didn't listen, and now no one can help you. Before he could answer, Albus felt cold metal being pressed into the back of his neck as the seat on his right side was suddenly occupied too. This time he could see that Alice Longbottom now had a gun pressed into his side. Frank might struggle with his speech, but everything else works just fine. You need to believe he's ready and capable of putting a bullet into that fucking manipulative head of yours. My godson, his mate, and our children are about to go and face Voldemort, and you help those evil bastards get to them. You have no idea how much I want to put a bullet in you myself. Give me an excuse, Albus. Just give me an excuse. Cornelius, Borislaw, Barchoke, and Amelia walked into the stadium. Harry's party and the other two champions followed on. And Aura handed a microphone to the minister as Lee's routine to warm up the crowd came to an abrupt end. As you can see, we have a slight change of plans today. In fact, the third task has just been cancelled. There wasn't a sound from the crowd. The auras and warriors now streaming into the stadium might have had something to do with that. Cornelius then proceeded to tell everyone exactly what was going on. The Wizarding Wireless had been denied the right to broadcast this event live for this very reason. Centurion Crow's name was placed in the Goblet of Fire by Dolor's Umbridge, acting on the orders of Voldemort. That did raise some noise. The three Auras who normally trained with Harry's group had been tasked with arresting Umbridge. They found themselves having to try and defend the witch. There had been a group of Crow's marauders sitting a couple of rows behind her. Dolor's was taken down before the three Auras could get there. Two had to shield, while the third levitated the unconscious witch out the stadium. Some very accurate spells, though left her barely recognizable as human, far less as a witch called Dolor's Umbridge by the time they got her out. At any other time, Cornelius would have enjoyed watching Dolor's get taken apart by students. Not today, though. Madame Umbridge was not working alone. Albus Dumbledore was advising her on how best to help Voldemort. Have you anything to say, Albus? All eyes may now be turned in his direction, but this was not how Dumbledore had planned it. He still hoped to talk his way out of this, though. If I am to be publicly accused, I would at least think these good people deserve to hear what proof you have. He didn't get to finish his impromptu speech, Alice's Grow interrupting him. Wrong answer. We don't have time for your games today. This is for the greater good, Albus, just not yours. Dan had removed some of the power from their bullets, not wanting anyone else injured should it pass straight through the old goat's body. There wasn't a loud bang, but Dumbledore's scream made up for that as the elbow of his wand arm was just shattered. Okay, Severus, do your stuff. If he puts up too much of a fight, I can easily put another bullet in him. I've got 5 left. Albus was in a great deal of pain and shock when Severus just added to that by standing and attacking his mind. Normally, he would have been able to repel Severus' attack, but things weren't normal. The pain emanating from his shattered elbow was intense. There were also guns being pressed into the back of his head, and now his right knee too. The horrendous agony from his elbow was irrefutable proof the people who held these guns were more than willing to use them. While Albus and Severus fought their battle of wills, Cornelius explained to the crowd that the trophy had been turned into a portkey to whisk Harry away to where Voldemort had prepared his trap. Telling the crowd that Professor Snape was trying to get whatever information Dumbledore had out of him, since Voldemort would get suspicious if his trap wasn't sprung soon, saw an unprecedented swell of support head in Severus' direction. It was a now heavily perspiring Severus who once more sat down. He certainly needed a seat. A few deep breaths were also required to center himself before casting the sonorous charm to give everyone the news. The portkey is set to take the Centurion to a field overlooked by a statue of a knight on a horse. It's at a place called Bannockburn. This caused great celebration amongst the crowd, and when Minerva McGonagall shouted, she knew exactly where that was. Even the family were cheering. Severus, though, had more to say. He held his hand up for silence before continuing. Dumbledore here added his own little twist to Voldemort's plan. He built a stunner into the portkey. Should Harry touch that cup, he will arrive in Bannockburn unconscious. The sound of a gunshot was clearly heard this time. And thanks for reading an N2 what. Would you rather have the cliffhanger in the middle of the battle? Next chapter, the fight, with no Cliffy, I promise. And 3 thanks to all those who asked how the very real battle to save our school is progressing. Latest news is now available on our blog page, 3ws.notomega.org.uk. 102. The Battle of Bannockburn. Harry Crow A.N. warning as promised. No Cliffy. Chapter 102. The Dark Lord looked upon the statue of Robert the Bruce and wasn't impressed. Then again, very little impressed him. One thing did imprint on a young Tom Riddle, however. One of his primary school teachers had a way with words that simply mesmerized and inspired the children in his care. Listening to the enthralling tale of how this noble knight had failed twice already in his quest, and was then forced to hide for his life in a cave, was a memory that still stuck with him after all these years. Hearing how the Bruce gained hope by watching while a spider tried and tried again until it managed to spin its web was awe-inspiring to a 7-year-old Tom Riddle. This was the tiny seed that eventually germinated into his never give up, and your schemes will come to pass mentality. Lord Voldemort certainly now realized that part of the story was probably nothing more than an old wives' tale, but it was undeniable that Robert the Bruce won a great victory on this very spot. He also became ruler of his country, which was what had brought the Dark Lord here. Unlike the Bruce, Lord Voldemort had spun his own web, and now it only remained for his victim to fall into his clutches. When he killed Potter, the Dark Lord intended to transfigure this statue into a giant likeness of himself before placing the boy's dead body in the effigy's outstretched hands. They would then remove the Muggle-repelling charms from the site and head out of the country, returning to their base only long enough to pick up Nagini and the baby. Like Robert the Bruce, Lord Voldemort was destined to rule over this country too, and that journey would start over in earnest today. Ooh-oh, the echo of the gunshot wasn't heard, Dumbledore's screams of pain drowning out any chance of that happening. After listening to what he'd intended, Alice's finger had tightened on that trigger all of its own accord. The spirit of her best friend, Lily Potter, might have had something to do with this, though Lily would surely have aimed higher up. Alice's gun was now aimed considerably higher up, right between Dumbledore's eyes. The bullet that had destroyed his knee also caused the old wizard to tumble right off his seat. Dumbledore was now lying on the floor space between the rows of seats, writhing in agony, while an armed Alice coolly towered over him, poised and ready to finish the job. "You sick bastard, have you ever spoken the truth to us?" A hand very gently pushed her gun arm down. "We are better than him, Love." "I know, darling, and he really deserves to spend the rest of his miserable life rotting in Azkaban. Anything happens to our family, though, nothing, and no one is going to stop me shooting the bastard again." Severus then stunned Albus, removed his wand, and wrapped him in chains for good measure. With a shattered elbow and knee, Dumbledore wasn't going anywhere under his own steam. Emma was determined her children weren't going anywhere either. She handed Jamie to Sapphire, A crying Luna was sitting next to her goblin friend, with Carlin trying to comfort his girlfriend. Carlin nodded he would take care of all of them before Emma headed down to be with the group. Knowing there were effectively two prime ministers and the goblin ruler standing there, and that Harry was an officer in that same goblin army, Emma couldn't go charging in as protective mummy with all guns blazing. She intended that her opinion would be heard, though, and was delighted to see Dan seem to be on the same wavelength. "Won't your armor protect you from that spell, Harry?" Normally, that would be a yes, Dan, but touching that cup with my armor won't activate the portkey. It needs skin contact, specifically mine. It will also stun anyone else who touches the cup along with me. Emma waited no longer. "Now we know where they are. Can't you just all go and get them?" Harry hated having to give this answer. He just didn't have another. "They're behind wards, Mum. By the time we could set up wards of our own to keep them there, they would be long gone, and we would have missed our only chance. We have to be in there to give our warders the time they need to complete their task before those three disappear again. We are talking about 10 seconds, Mum, and Amelia will already be using those precious seconds to start bringing down Voldemort's wards." Hermione wanted to let everyone know Harry wasn't going anywhere without her. "Betsy can make sure I'm right behind you. Between my arrival, Tonks, Neville, and Padma, along with the hundreds turning up outside their wards, that should buy us the seconds we need for me to revive you. Can't we get that stunner removed from the portkey? This scheme was already too dangerous, in my opinion. You arriving into their clutches while unconscious is bloody madness." Only Dan's arms wrapping around Emma halted her race to Asteria. It was a close call, though, and she couldn't rule out visiting that location later. The Longbottoms and Severus arrived to destroy Emma's last desperate suggestion. "I'm sorry about this, Emma, but it took Dumbledore hours to weave that spell through the portkey. It would take him hours to remove it too, but that was before Alice put a couple of bullets in him. Couldn't do it now, even if we trusted him with a wand, something I wouldn't recommend. Having looked into his mind, Albus Dumbledore is one sick, twisted individual. It was Barchoke who summed the situation up. They have a plan that has a fair chance of working, but we're going to need a decision, and soon. These five are the ones who are going to be in danger. I think it's their decision to make." The ambassador found himself being interrupted by Neville. "I think it's Harry's decision to make. We'll be right behind him, but it's his life that's on the line here. He says go, Padma and I will have his back." Tonks quickly agreed with that sentiment. Where Harry went she would follow. Taking Hermione's hand, Harry asked for her help with this decision. "It's us, Hermione, from now until the end. This is certainly something that affects both of us, so what do you think?" "I think we might not get a chance we've all trained bloody hard for. As I've just said, Betsy and I will be right behind you, with the revival spell already on my lips. Then we dance. We can't live the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders for the ambush we know would come one day. Now is our day, Harry. This is our hour." That was exactly how Harry felt. Hermione just put those same emotions into words far better than he ever could. They both discovered, though, that someone had already done that job for them, brilliantly too. Professor McGonagall's Scottish lilt was thicker than anyone there had heard it before, as Minerva recited something she obviously knew well. "Now's the day, and now's the hour. See the front, oh, battle lure. See approach proud Edward's power chains and slavery. Edward Longshanks wasn't known as the hammer of the Scots for nothing, and he didn't distinguish between magical and muggle. Rabbie Burns wrote that about the Battle of Bannockburn, something that has a special place in every Scots heart. That abomination, Voldemort, wants to destroy that association forever, and Dumbledore was helping him. I can make Amelia Portkeys that will drop her auras right on top of the bastards." There were a few others in the audience shouting they could do the same. With the mission now a go, there was a load of organizing to be done, and quickly. Mad-Eye, Shax, and the trio of auras they had sparred with were prepared for this moment. The auras were split into 5 groups and received a rapid refresher course on the best spells for pulling down wards. Bill had his own group who were doing the same. His group might not rival the aura groups for size, but they won hands down on commitment. Arthur, Percy, Penny, and the now-of-age twins were just the members of Bill's family that were involved. The Blacks, Hobsons, and Remus would also be hitting those wards with everything they had. The other 2 champions had been joined by Roger and Cedric, Amos also choosing to fight beside his son. Madame Maxine had insisted on joining too, as had Pomona Sprout, Phileas Flitwick, and Severus. Since Amelia was in overall charge of the battle, Borislaw and Cornelius intended to fight alongside this group too. Minerva was making her contribution with the portkeys. She needed to sit down for the last couple and had nothing left to take to any fight. Dan had his own squad of shooters, with Barchoke, Frank, and Ramrow. Not one of the fathers would hesitate to put a bullet into any of the three murderers. Ragnar had teams of warders ready to stop anyone leaving the fight before it was finished, while 4 squads of warriors were itching for their steel to taste blood. The women, children, and warriors these three had murdered that dark afternoon in Diagon Alley would be avenged today. They were all hoping the price paid wouldn't be as high, though. Knowing their centurion was going to enter this battle unconscious, relying on his mate and their friends to rescue him, elevated all 5 of their statuses even higher within the warriors' ranks and the nation. If they pulled this off today, the Hall of Heroes would be seeing a new tableau commissioned. The 3 mothers were currently hugging the 5 who would face this. Emma, Smeeta, and Alice, considered all of them family, devastated wouldn't even come close to describing their emotions if they didn't all come back. Amelia was looking over everything while trying to think of anything they might have missed when she felt a tug on her robes. She recognized Darby and Betsy at once, and they had 4 other elves for company. Missy Bones, we's went and seen bad wizards. We's like to show you before you go there. Amelia wasn't sure what was being offered here. You can show me this, Darby, without Voldemort knowing about it. All 6 elves were enthusiastically nodding in sync, though it would seem Darby had been elected spokes. Elf. We cans do that, easy. The half a dozen elves began waving their hands, and the ground in front of Amelia quickly transformed into a scale model of the battle site. It took her a moment to get her breath back before Amelia shouted, the urgency in her voice stopping everyone. Harry, you'll definitely want to see this, and so will quite a few others. A quick explanation of what this was saw the Granger women fussing over a blushing Darby and Betsy. Harry made a point of thanking the other 4 too. They all now knew the warded area was slightly smaller than a Quidditch pitch. Barchoke was already talking with the elves on the best place to transport his warders, while Dan was carrying out the exact same process with the shooters. They were running out of time, though all were now far more prepared than they thought they could possibly be. Only Harry, being stunned, was holding them back from cheering at all the good news coming their way. The 3 couples shared needy kisses with their spouses before getting into position, ready to give the signal. There were witches sitting in the stadium who had once fancied they had a chance at the boy who lived. Watching this drama unfold just emphasized why their chances had always been nil. Harry was deliberately placing his very life in Hermione's hands, and she was prepared to go toe-to-toe with the trio of Voldemort, Lestrange, and Rookwood in an effort to save him. As much as they might have coveted the title of Lady Potter, none of them were crazy enough to even contemplate doing that. Amelia's voice rang around the stadium. This is it, people. Do your jobs, and the first round is on me. When Harry leaves, we're all right behind him. Counting down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. The mark maze supposedly arranged for the 3rd task had long since been vanished. Harry stood in the center of the arena and reached for the cup. He had no sooner left than Hermione was gone too, holding the little elf's hand. Tonks shouted, Potter emergency, go, go, go. Before she was also gone, Padma and Neville were also traveling by holding an elf's hand, the couple quickly leaving too. Within seconds, an arena that had been bursting at the seams was empty, except for the 3 mothers and Augusta. Sapphire made her way over to return Jamie to his mother, while Hannah and Susan brought Astrid over as the group were left with nothing to do but wait for news. A crying Luna raced to the group and was now clinging to Emma and Jamie. This had been a total shock to her. The rest of the stadium could only sit quietly and await news. Some, like Marley, who was sitting trying to comfort Ginny, now had a large stake in this battle too. Most of her family had just portkeyed away to fight Voldemort. It was only the sheer number of those who had left to fight alongside them that was offering her comfort. Even Voldemort shouldn't be able to resist when faced with what was effectively 2 armies. Parvati was weeping in Blaze's arms, having said all that needed saying to the 4 of them before the event began. Parvati knew if she'd gone down there then, it could have affected Padma. They would probably have needed to stun her before she would let her twin go to face this. Blaze had his suspicions, but this was way beyond anything he'd imagined. Draco and Pansy were sitting beside them, trying to offer some comfort. I guessed what they were planning way back. A part of me wishes I hadn't. It's been horrendous watching them train for this and not being able to help in any way. Parvati was trying to control her sobs as she spoke. Just being there for them is all they wanted, Draco. Blaze, we need to go down there. Mum will need us now. The four headed to where the group was anxiously waiting for news, knowing today's battle would be measured in minutes, if that. All around the stadium, children were being comforted by parents or friends. Natalie was nearly as upset as Luna. She clung to her parents, seeking their assurance everything would be okay. Little Danielle Dugan knew her daddy, Harry, Hermione, and Bartchoke had all gone off to fight the bad wizards. In her case, though, she was the one actually offering comfort. Mummy, the bad wizards won't stand a chance, not with my daddy and Harry fighting them together. Bartchoke and Hermione won't let anything happen to them either. Deborah wrapped their precious daughter in her arms, hoping Danielle was right. Maggie Creevy was simply inconsolable. It didn't matter what anyone said. She wouldn't believe them. Nothing would work except seeing them all come back. Jenny was a nervous wreck, clinging to Ewan for comfort. Bill had kissed her before a lot of people. She knew really well, basically just headed off to war. She didn't know anything about magical wars. What Jenny did know, though, was that, in any type of war, very rarely did everyone make it home alive, and in one piece. She was praying like she'd never prayed before that this would be one of those oh-so-rare occasions. Ooh, the elation that flashed through the Dark Lord when the wards warned him there was an incoming portkey was indescribable. Here was his chance for revenge, his chance for redemption in the eyes of his deserting pureblood followers, his chance to get off that bloody island. The elation vanished instantly, though, when an unconscious Potter arrived. Something wasn't right here. All three already had their wands in their hands. Those wands immediately tracked to the girl who had just appeared at Potter's side. Betsy placed Hermione right beside Harry. She was alarmed, though, at the three wands now pointed at her beloved mistress. With a snap of her fingers, the trio were knocked onto their arses. You will not hurt my family. After reviving Harry, Hermione could see how much the loyal elf had taken out of herself buying them that time. She was swaying about as if drunk. Betsy, go, be safe. When Tonks appeared beside her master and mistress, Betsy popped away to the other side of the wards. She would be staying to watch in case her mistress needed her again. Augustus scrambled back to his feet, disbelief written on his features. Not only were there now three opponents inside their blood wards, what seemed like hundreds more were appearing outside them. Knowing their trap had just been reversed, he looked toward his master and mate, and knew instantly he would die today. They should have left immediately, but that wouldn't be happening. His master was enraged beyond reason at being thwarted again, and getting knocked on his arse by a house elf was clearly an insult too far for him, while his beautiful Bella had the bloodlust in her eyes. They wouldn't be going back to collect Marvolo after this battle. Augustus wouldn't be going anywhere at all. His last thoughts proved to be those about his mate and son, since none of them had seen the witch and wizard that an elf had placed behind them. Powerful cutting curses from Padma and Neville slammed into him. His very last memory was that of an enraged Bella turning to face these new attackers. The goblins had their ward up in record time, and the magic users were all hitting the Dark Lord's blood ward with everything they had. Warriors and centurions were poised to charge the instant the wards came down, knowing those same magical users would be firing over their heads. Padma and Neville were in way over their heads. Putting Rookwood down had swung the odds to 5 against 2. When those two were Voldemort and Lestrange, though, those odds still weren't in their favor. Bellatrix was faster, deadlier, and more powerful than anyone they'd ever faced. She was also clearly mad, as in more than just angry. Foam and spittle was coming from her mouth as curses spewed out her wand, all of them powerful, dark, and deadly. Both of their goblin shields had already been sacrificed to save them from some really nasty shit. When Padma stumbled on the uneven ground, she thought it was all over. Lestrange was on her in a flash, a Cruciatus heading in her direction, only for Neville to throw himself in front of the torture curse. His screams were loud and piercing as Lestrange couldn't resist a bit of taunting. Oh, look, another Longbottom at the end of my wand. I'll need to make sure this one doesn't recover. It took 4 warriors to pull Frank down. Seeing his son under that hated curse caused the retired aura to open fire, even though the wards had yet to come down. There were bullets ricocheting everywhere, and someone was going to be hurt. The warriors were as gentle as possible. They just needed to get Frank to start pulling the trigger. Harry already had his shield on his arm when he touched the portkey. Hermione's revival spell saw him roll and then get to his feet, with his armor now active and his knife in his hand. The sword of Gryffindor was soon out the sheath at his shoulder and in his other hand. He would need everything he had as Voldemort appeared to be seriously pissed off. Padma and Neville then taking out Rookwood certainly didn't improve Voldemort's mood any. His role had placed Harry to Hermione's right, with Tonks covering her left. All three were firing spells at Voldemort, but he was still managing to return deadly spells at them. The ground under their feet was just a field, not the best for dodging around on, and that was before Spellfire started churning it up. Every time Harry would attempt to get close enough to use his sword, Voldemort increased the rate and ferocity of his spells, heading in Tonks and Hermione's directions. Harry was then forced to fire spells and move back to help cover the girls. There would be no victory in taking out Voldemort if it cost one of them their lives. This tactic was effectively forcing Harry to fight Voldemort's type of fight, but all the combatants knew it wouldn't be for much longer. Hence why no one was holding anything back. This was sheer bedlam. There was an unprecedented amount of magic being poured into those shields, so the clock was ticking. Since both Hermione and Harry had already had their goblin shields shattered too, it simply couldn't go on much longer without someone getting seriously hurt. Harry's worst fears were just borne out as Neville's screams reverberated over the battlefield. Tonks had no option but to attack Lestrange. The fact that the three of them were barely containing Voldemort at the time couldn't be taken into consideration. Harry was about to change tactics again when Voldemort beat him to it. Seeing the pink-haired one having to switch her attack gave the Dark Lord the opportunity he'd been working toward. He didn't want to just kill the Potter brat today. He wanted him to die a broken man, and Lord Voldemort knew exactly how to achieve that. Seeing she was distracted by the delicious screams coming from her friend, 3 curses left his wand in the direction of Potter's bitch. She managed to dodge 2, but not the third. It didn't really matter that it only hit her right shoulder. When the killing curse hit, you were dead. Watching her topple to the ground froze Potter and gave the Dark Lord a few seconds to enjoy his victory. Ah, Potter, another mudblood bitch dies trying to save you and fails. It's time to die, Harry Potter. Neville's screams had forced Tonks to change targets. The aura was now hitting her aunt with everything she had. Bella, though, was dealing with it all and still had time to chat. Oh, look, a half-blood black dares to attack her betters. I'll show those sisters of mine who's stronger. They'll know for sure when they're weeping over your body. Avada Kedavra. Bella never got to finish the spell as she had just made a critical error. Bella had dismissed Padma, not something that a person who had just tortured Neville should ever do. The enraged witch charged the short distance between them and her flashing blade, with the Longbottom name engraved along its length, sliced through Bella's arm just below the elbow. Tonks hit her aunt with a stunner just as a second cry rang around the wards. The anguish dripping off this voice would have melted hearts of stone. Seeing Hermione lying there unmoving, Harry's sword seemed to move on its own. As a heartbroken scream left his lungs, his magic poured from the fabled blade. His grief was mighty, and everything he had left was channeled toward defeating his enemy. Voldemort was just about to cast another killing curse when a bolt of blinding white light shot from the sword, and there was no wand left to cast the spell. There was no arm there either. The raw magic had simply vaporized everything it touched, his wand, arm, and part of his shoulder, before continuing on its way and impacting on the ward. Dan had tried their doctored bullets the instant they arrived, quickly signaling to the other 3 they wouldn't penetrate the wards. He was standing watching what appeared somewhat like the deadliest New Year celebrations on the planet. Magic was being poured into the shields, the flashes of light also causing flakes of twinkling magic to drop down on the combatants inside like macabre confetti. Those inside were also supplying fireworks of their own, with spells being fired off at an incredible rate. Seconds almost seemed like hours, as they were forced to wait on the wards coming down, never more so than when Neville screamed. Watching as Hermione was hit with that green curse of death seemed to make time stand still. His daughter appeared to take an entire lifetime to collapse to the ground. Harry's anguished scream restarted time, and Dan was firing before he knew it. Harry's magic also hitting the wards was the final push needed to bring them down. Dan's bullet was perhaps the first thing to pass through them. Since Barchok had shot at the exact same time, it would be impossible to tell who was first. What was unmistakable, though, was that both bullets impacted with Voldemort's head. He was dead before the maelstrom of spells hit as he fell to the ground. Tonks had heard Amelia's down and pulled Padma to the ground. The witch was intent on using her blade to finish Lestrange. She pointed Padma at Neville before turning to see a sight that was totally heartbreaking. Harry was crawling to Hermione, trying to protect his mate from any overhead spells by covering her body with his own. The shout of ceasefire brought silence to the field of battle. Harry was lying protectively over Hermione, knowing it was too late but not caring. He was crying while tenderly moving her beautiful hair from her face, whispering softly in her ear as he embraced the woman he loved. "You are mine, and I will always be yours now and until the day I die. I am so sorry, my love, you fought so bravely." Harry couldn't say any more. His imagination was playing tricks on him. He could have sworn Hermione's chest had just risen, but the dead don't breathe. He then examined her shoulder to see it was bleeding, something the dead don't do either, and the killing curse doesn't leave a mark. There was no mistake this time. Her chest had just risen again. Warriors had formed a circle around the Centurion and his fallen mate, giving him a little time to grieve. They were facing away to provide their Centurion with some semblance of privacy, so the warriors couldn't really miss both fathers trying to comfort one another. Barchok had his arm around Dan's shoulder. This was possible because the distraught father was currently slumped on his knees sobbing. Both fathers couldn't quite believe what they heard next. "Alive! She's alive. We need a healer. Get a healer over here quick." Ragnar himself was first through the line of warriors protecting the couple, closely followed by a couple of healers. Dan struggled drunkenly to his feet, desperately wanting to believe what he'd just heard, but terrified to do so. Leaning on Barchok was the only reason he was able to approach their fallen daughter. Both gained a semblance of hope from watching the healers work. There was nothing for a healer to do when someone was dead. Cutting her dragon hide top away, the healers were at once able to see what had happened. "Centurion, your family armor saved your mate's life. The killing curse can be stopped by a physical barrier, though that barrier is often destroyed. Her golden armor has been blasted into her shoulder and will have to be removed. The shock from that probably knocked her out. However, I would not recommend reviving her at the moment. She would and will be in a lot of pain until we can clean that shoulder up." Ragnar wanted there to be no chance of errors here. "Healer, she will live. She will have trouble wielding a sword like she has before. Apart from that, I would expect her to make a full recovery." The healer was prevented from saying any more, as Ragnar let out a bellow that was part celebration, but a good portion of relief too. This was immediately picked up and repeated by Barchok and the other goblins, spreading right across the battlefield as jubilant warriors announced to the world in general that their warrior princess had defied the odds again and survived. Swords and axes drummed off shields as a total victory was now being wildly celebrated. Dan held the emotional wreck that was Harry in his arms. It was the only way the healers could get to work on Hermione. "Thought I had lost her, Dan. I can't lose her, I just can't. She's still with us, son, though who's going to tell her mother?" Both felt hands on their shoulders as a knackered Sirius stood with them. "I'll do that. You'll need to go to Gringotts with Hermione. I'll bring the rest of the family. Gringotts is going to be busy tonight." With Sirius mentioning family, it suddenly hit Harry he hadn't asked about anyone else. Seeing his Hermione lying there had blocked everything and everyone else out. "Neville, Padma, Tonks, how are they?" "Neville was hit with the Cruciatus and is being treated as we speak. Padma is fine but won't leave his side. Tonks has been inconsolable. She thought she failed you." Tonks was magnificent. We would never have lasted without her. Those were the longest seconds of all our lives. He would get no argument from his godfather on that one. "I'll tell her that. She just about fainted when the word spread Hermione had made it." "I'm puzzled, though. I thought her armor only covered her shield side and part of her torso. That's her other shoulder. Did you change it?" This had Harry shaking his head. We haven't done anything. That's why I thought she was gone. I knew that shoulder was unprotected. It was a smiling Barchoke who enjoyed proving his son wrong. I beg to differ. Have you tried it since completing your bond? Harry was still standing with Dan's arm around him as the healers had Hermione on a stretcher and would soon be ready to portkey her away. He kept his head down as he answered. No, we've only done light training since returning from the island. Seeing his son was uncomfortable with this subject, Barchoke pressed ahead. Now this war was over, their new situation would have to be dealt with. The only way to do that was to get the subject out in the open and talk about it. I think the magic released when you completed your bond would have been enough to extend her armor. There was certainly plenty magic present when you initiated your bond. That was 3 years ago, and you're both a lot more powerful now. Harry still had his head down. I never noticed, in either of those occasions. Dan pulled Harry closer. Listen, son, I know Hermione wanted to complete your bonding so she could save you. If that saved her life too, then you'll certainly get no grief from me about it, or your mum. At that, they were ready to go. Both fathers accompanied their children to Gringotts, leaving Sirius with the task of returning to Hogwarts and breaking the news. Amelia stood with Cornelius, Borislaw and Ragnar over the body of Voldemort. He wasn't coming back from this. Between bullets, multiple spells, and Amelia had seen at least one fireball hit, the Dark Lord was truly gone. You want the body to display. I know that is your custom. Ragnar nodded to the minister in thanks but declined the offer. While it is our custom to display the heads of our enemies, this piece of shit doesn't even deserve that honor. We have been avenged, and had plenty of our people here to witness it. Rookwood is also dead, but what about Lestrange? Cornelius quickly answered that, seeing Borislaw was more than interested too. Oh, you have my assurance she will be dealt with permanently. We will need to interview her first about what happened to any baby. She was pregnant after all, and also to discover if anyone other than Umbridge was working with them. Then she will receive an overdose of Veritaserum. Both Borislaw and Ragnar were satisfied with that. The group then found themselves being approached by Rita Skeeter and asked if any of them would like to make a statement. Harry was asked to leave as the healers worked on Hermione. She needed delicate work done, not something to be hampered by her mate pacing up and down while glowering at them. He found both fathers waiting outside and Betsy cowering in a corner. He approached the little elf and knelt down beside her. She's going to be fine, Betsy. Hermione is going to be with us for many years to come. Master is sure. I'm sure. She flung herself at him and cried into his chest. Betsy thought she had lost her mistress. So did I, Betsy, so did I, as the little elf regained control of herself. Still determined to wait outside the place her mistress was, Harry, Barchoke and Dan headed off to find Neville. They walked into his room, and Harry was attacked by a witch. Padma had her arms around him and was kissing all over his face between words. Are you all right? I thought we'd lost her. I'm fine, Padma, and Hermione will be too. Sounding remarkably like his father, Neville still had the shakes from the Cruciatus exposure. He nevertheless tried to crack a joke. Harry, anything going on you two want to tell us about? Standing with his arms around this beautiful witch, Harry just couldn't resist. Yes, Neville, Padma and I are getting married. This announcement was greeted with total silence. Harry squeezed Padma to let her know there was a punchline coming and to stop her belting him one. To the two most wonderful people on the planet. Barchoke started it, but soon Dan, Frank, Ramrau, Neville, and Padma were all roaring with laughter. This just seemed to upset Harry, though. Oh, come on, guys. You wait until Hermione isn't here, and then you laugh at one of my jokes. You know she'll never believe this. That just made the six of them laugh all the harder, knowing what Harry said was true. Augusta had made a portkey that would bring some of them right back to the stadium. As the minutes ticked by, the worry felt by those waiting climbed exponentially. Something must have happened. They should have been back with news by now. Emma, we don't know that. I was an aura. This is always the worst bit. They were huddled in a group, trying to ignore that every pair of eyes in the stadium was focused on them. Alice's words providing a little comfort until another minute passed. It was Smeeta this time who let her nerves get the better of her. Amelia hoped to have those wards down in 30 seconds. They left nearly 10 minutes ago. She was halted by the appearance of the Blacks and Hobsons in the middle of the arena. Sirius wasn't going to hang about. He knew there were thousands of people here waiting on news. Casting a sonorous on himself, he gave them the ultra-short version of what had happened. Voldemort is dead, and our people are all okay. The roar this generated would have deafened the shooters had they still been hidden in the stadium roof. The four then headed straight over to the family, who were all hugging each other while crying tears of relief. Knowing Sirius as they did, all could see he had more to say. You need to remember what I just said is true. We have some injuries, but they'll soon be fine. Lestrange hit Neville with the Cruciatus. Alice had her hand over her mouth at that, trying not to scream at the pain her son must have suffered. He's fine, Alice, and receiving treatment in Gringotts. That Padma took Lestrange out with her sword is probably the best tonic he could have at the moment. She may have tears in her eyes, but Alice Longbottom was made of stern stuff. Turning to Smeeta, she attempted a smile. Have I told you that I love my daughter-in-law? She's certainly good for my son. Sirius then turned to Emma. Harry and Hermione are really mates now. Both are the only known survivors of Voldemort's killing curse. It hit her armor, and she has an injury similar to the one Bartchoke received in the Ministry. The healers are removing pieces of her golden armor from her shoulder as we speak. Emma had first-hand experience of just how good goblin healing was. Hermione being in their care was actually reassuring. She just needed to hear confirmation for herself. She's fine, though. Serious. Hermione's in no danger. Only of my godson never letting her out of his sight again. For a moment we all thought we had lost her, Emma. That was not a good moment. All four fathers travelled to Gringotts and are waiting for you there. That was all Emma needed to hear. They were all safe and waiting on her. Are you okay to travel, Sirius? The four of you look done in. The four of us are, Emma. We could see them all fighting for their lives. Their opponents weren't holding anything back. You better believe we all put everything we had into bringing those wards down. They were handing out pepper-up potions back at Bannockburn, but we knew you would be desperate for news. We'll all follow on shortly, after a visit to Poppy. She kissed Sirius' cheek, while Henrika collected Astrid. Emma then called for Darby and asked if he could arrange transport for all of them to Gringotts. It only took a minute for all the family to be standing on the front steps of the Goblin Bank, only Augusta staying behind to look after Hogwarts. The Goblin Guards knew exactly who these people were, especially with Sapphire amongst them. They were escorted straight to the medical facility. Hermione slowly opened her eyes to find herself looking into that special pair of green ones she loved so much. Then what happened earlier hit home. Oh, Harry, I'm so sorry. I let everyone down. What happened? How's Neville? Hermione was stopped from saying any more by the simple fact of Harry kissing her. Everyone's fine, love. The job's done and you didn't let anyone down. Just take it easy. It's not every day you get hit by a killing curse. The entire family are waiting to see you, but there's someone you need to see first. A signal with his hand, and Betsy was very nearly in the bed beside Hermione. Mistress needs to do what Master says, take care of herself and get better. I will, Betsy, and thank you for today. You were wonderful, probably saved all our lives. I need you to look after yourself too. Will you do that for me? The little elf's head was nearly coming off with the eagerness of her nodding, trying to please her mistress. You take a good rest, Betsy. We'll soon be back home. A happy Betsy hugged her mistress before popping away to follow orders she could do with a nap. Harry, how did I survive the killing curse? Your bracelet that says, best friends forever, wouldn't let Voldemort take you from me. The person who gave you that bracelet thinks forever should mean forever. Father suggested completing our bonding now, as your armor covering all your body. That was a conversation I could have done without having with your dad. Hermione was giggling at that when Luna and Sapphire stuck their heads in, both rushing into the room when they realized she was awake. Oh, Hermione, you're awake. We've got a rota going where we take turns checking to see if you were. I'd better go and tell Emma. Luna shot out of there, giving Sapphire a moment to talk. Once the girls got over the shock, they understood why you didn't tell them. I didn't want you worrying about it. I don't want you worrying about anything. Oh, and the whole goblins bowing to you might be back with a vengeance, but don't expect me to be doing it. Sapphire barely had time to hug Hermione before the door was flung open and their extended family began streaming in. The room was soon full, and Harry stood back to let everyone see Hermione was indeed all right. Watching Neville enter was just the icing on the cake. He might be leaning a little on Padma, but he would be back to normal in a day or so. Both Neville and Hermione would certainly be fit enough to attend the family meeting where they arranged this summer's holidays. Tonks and Hermione hugging settled the last of any unrest amongst the family. None of the four underestimated the crucial part she had played in ensuring they were all here tonight to talk about what happened today. Harry felt his father standing beside him and reached out to pull the goblin into a hug. "We have a fine family, Father, a family that is all here. I think this counts as a special occasion." "Indeed, son. Getting humans to appreciate our sense of humor is no small achievement." Watching as father and son held each other while they laughed their heads off was the best medicine Hermione could have. That was until Padma dropped the bombshell that she and Harry were getting married. Thanks for reading. 103. Aftermath. Harry Crow and I had hoped to get this out yesterday, but have had an incredibly busy week. Therefore, it's a belated happy birthday to Alex 33, the lady who has been checking over my attempts at writing for years now and helping to make me a better writer. A gentleman never reveals a lady's age. All I'll say on the matter is that she's much younger than me. Chapter 103. While enjoying the impromptu party that had broken out in the stadium, Ginny wasn't the only one whose eyes continually scanned the path into Hogwarts. First sign of people appearing, Ginny was off and running. The wide grin on her face began to fade the closer she got, as Ginny noticed there were a lot less people than she'd been expecting, and just 2 of them had red hair. It was also hard to miss that none of them were celebrating or even smiling. She slammed into the twins at full pelt, only to discover their return hugs were just as needy as hers. "Where is everyone else? Why all the long faces? I thought we won, and everyone was fine." Fred tried to smile, but his heart wasn't really in it. "One question at a time, Gin. Dad, Bill, Percy, and Penny are all working now. Can you ask Mum to make sure Jenny either gets home with the McDonalds or ends up at the Burrow?" Bill had to go on one final mission and doesn't think he'll make it back to Hogwarts in time to pick Jenny up. "Why can't you tell her yourselves? There's a great party going on." Seeing both twins shy away from the idea of a party, the entire group actually all reacted exactly the same. Had Ginny really worried? "What aren't you telling me?" After an involuntary shudder, George tried to explain their reactions to his sister. "Ginny, that was without doubt the worst experience of my life, and last summer an Inferus chewed my ear off. We had to watch those bastards trying to kill our friends while we attacked the wards. Neville's screams while Lestrin had him under the Cruciatus is something I could have done without ever hearing." Roger had his arm around a shattered floor, his girlfriend only sparking to life when she spotted Gabrielle running toward her. As the sisters embraced, Roger added his 2 nuts worth. "Hearing Harry roar when Hermione got hit by Voldemort's killing curse will give me nightmares for years." It was as if his heart had been torn out. The smallest redhead could hardly speak at that, her voice now barely above a whisper. "Sirius never mentioned that. He said everyone was okay." "Everyone is, Ginny, or at least they will be. Bill told us Hermione's bracelet is some of the finest work goblins have ever produced. It has just about every protection enchantment possible on it." Even so, everyone was still surprised the first time it began to expand like Harry's armor. It shouldn't be able to do that. Fred now had Ginny in his arms, offering his sister some much-needed comfort. The killing curse hit that golden armor, and we're taught only physical objects can block that curse. Hermione's armor saved her life, Ginny, though she will need to get pieces of it removed from the wound on her shoulder. Bill also said that's at least the second time Hermione's armor has saved her. Needing to have armor save your life twice before you were 16 was not something Roger wanted to contemplate. At least now, we know the reason behind all that training and why they have been a little strange recently. Imagine knowing that was coming to face you. I also can't think of any other group who could have pulled that off. We 4 will ace our NEWT defense practicals, but those 4 are in a whole different league from us. George had the last word, though. They needed to be. As Severus followed the weary group up toward the castle, his mind couldn't help but drift back to the last time celebrations were held over Voldemort's defeat. He didn't celebrate that day either. He also understood exactly how Harry felt when the Centurion thought Hermione was dead. Severus had felt as if his heart had been ripped out his chest on that terrible Halloween Lily had been murdered. The difference here, however, was Hermione hadn't died, and she clearly returned Harry's feelings with as much love and passion she could. He made a promise to the woman he loved that very same Halloween, Severus Snape would do his best to avenge her death and look after her son. Today he'd upheld both of those promises. Her son was safe, and Voldemort was no more. Dumbledore was surely finished too. Everyone was now free to get on with their lives. Both Black and Lupin had already married well. It was time for Severus to break from the past and begin living in the present. He already had an offer from Augusta to teach here again next year, as well as a position waiting on his return to Gringotts. Severus would take the first few weeks of the holidays to see what he wanted to do with his life before he made any decisions. Just having those decisions available to him meant he was already in a better place than he had been for many, many years. Ooh, with so many people involved in the battle and all the spectators in the Hogwarts stadium, news of Voldemort's final demise quickly spread around the country. The next edition of the Daily Prophet was still eagerly anticipated, though, especially as Rita Skeeter was rumored to have been at the scene of the battle. Neither Rita nor their daily newspaper disappointed. The readers actually got a lot more than they had bargained for. The picture on the front page cranked up the drama from the instant they unrolled their newspaper. An unconscious Hermione being carried on a stretcher by 4 centurions, Harry, Dan, and Barchoke at her side. Clearly visible in the background were 3 auras standing guard over Voldemort's dead body. As if that picture wasn't iconic enough on its own, Rita's headline took it to another level. The Girl Who Lived. That particular headline dispelled any remaining doubts the country had about this witch one day marrying their hero. They were obviously fated to be together. Rita's article then went on to give a practically spell-by-spell account of the battle, especially how the 3 terrorists were dealt with before explaining exactly what had saved Hermione's life. She also painted a fuller picture of the battle by including a lot of the background action, describing how auras had tears running down their cheeks as they tried their utmost to get Voldemort's wards down. Watching those 5 brave people fight and not being able to intercede went against everything they stood for. Frank Longbottom having to be restrained for his own safety, while Bellatrix Lestrange used the torture curse on his son, was understood and heartfelt by every parent reading Rita's compelling words. She also described how over 100 warriors began physically attacking those same wards with goblin steel as Miss Granger fell, desperate to avenge her. This might go some way in accounting for their wild displays of jubilation on discovering she had survived. Miss Granger is clearly a well-loved figure within the Goblin Nation. Rita also had quotes that other journalists would kill for. The Bulgarian Minister of Magic was magnanimous in his praise for the efforts he had played a small part in here today. Last summer, like the rest of the world, I was shocked and appalled at the horrific attack after the Quidditch World Cup. The British Ministry of Magic and our friends from the Goblin Nation have been methodical yet relentless as they pursued these 3 murderers. What you witnessed here today was the result of almost 9 months of careful planning, reversing Voldemort's trap, and then finally ending it at Bannockburn. I perfectly understood the need for secrecy. I myself only becoming aware of this operation due to Minister Fudge needing my assistance with a matter regarding Albus Dumbledore. I don't want to say any more about that, but I will say Victor Crumb and I were honored to participate in justice being done on behalf of our fellow countrymen. Borislaw knew his final remark would be popular. He just didn't realize that everyone else would have to follow suit, not that they wouldn't want to anyway. When I return home, I shall be recommending to my government that these 5 heroes receive recognition from the witches and wizards of Bulgaria for the crucial part they played here today. Cornelius and Ragnarok echoed the same sentiments, including looking at rewarding the heroes of the hour. Amelia, though, had something a bit more substantial to say. She didn't want there to be the slightest doubt about what happened here today. What is already well documented is that these 4 teens have extra training 4 days a week. What is not so well known is that, for the last 2 years, their training has been identical to that afforded to trainee auras. Their tutors and I have been so impressed with them. Miss Granger, Miss Patel, and Mr. Longbottom have been awarded the rank of honorary auras. All will be able to wear aura dress robes when accepting any awards. Harry is of course a centurion, though my department would certainly be blessed to have any of those four working there. Rita promised that future editions of the Daily Prophet would have full details of how this plot of Voldemort's was discovered, what steps were taken to overcome Voldemort's scheme, and the part Albus Dumbledore played in aiding the Dark Lord. This guaranteed these future editions would sell every copy printed. The paper's owners had literally begged Rita to return, offering her any position she wanted at the Prophet. With her growing reputation and rapidly swelling vault, Rita took great pleasure in turning them down, then screwing even more gold out of them for her future exclusives. It was a subdued Hogwarts Great Hall who read what their fellow students had faced yesterday. It was beginning to dawn on them just why the four friends and two champions who had fought to bring Voldemort's wards down didn't want to talk about it. There were no Hogwarts lessons today, Augusta and Minerva taking the view that the students would have been almost impossible to teach today anyway. Their minds were clearly on other things, or other people. Augusta was also down 3 professors, the extended family all staying in London last night. She wanted to be there herself, but had a school to run. Augusta was also receiving constant updates from the family, indicating everything was going to be fine. The family meeting was planned for Sunday. She could wait until then to hug them all. Just knowing everyone had survived this time was enough for Augusta. Hermione left the Goblin Medical Facility on the Friday evening, her arm in a sling and warnings about overtaxing herself ringing in her ears. The plan was to stay in Gringotts for a couple of nights. The healers wanted to check on her for the next few days anyway, attend the family meeting in Hogwarts on Sunday before returning home to Crow's Nest. All 4 students agreed to give the last week at Hogwarts a miss. Padma, Neville, and Hermione had sat their potions, OWL, the week before. Hermione's wand and writing arm would be in a sling for most of that week anyway, and Neville was still getting odd bouts of the shakes. The couple had taken down Rookwood, and then Padma parted Lestrange from her arm. There were now more important things to be dealt with between them than being inside the castle for the final week. As Harry and Hermione sat in Father's apartment, Jamie happily sitting on Harry's lap, with his sister right next to them, it was time to discuss the first subject of importance. All 3 parents were pleased to see the subject in question totally catching the couple out. I have spoken to Dan and Emma to explain my and the nation's position on your relationship. You are both considered adults in our society, adults who chose to complete their bond. If you hadn't taken that action, we would have lost the daughter, sister, and wife who means so much to all of us here. In my eyes, and the eyes of our people, you are mates, husband and wife married. While you are inside Gringotts, you will be treated as such. Hermione didn't know it was possible to be embarrassed and excited at the same time. She looked to Harry, but her mate appeared to be in a different world. Jamie was chatting with his big brother as only a toddler can, his little fists wrapped around 2 of Harry's fingers as he pulled that hand around and giggled. Harry seemed as enraptured as Jamie was. His mind, though, was in a different place and a different time. Father, how did you go on? When I thought my Hermione was gone, there was nothing here for me anymore. I would have gladly gone with her. I don't think I could have continued without her. It was as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. Only Jamie seemed unaffected. Barchoke struggled to answer his son. When my mate passed away, I had a newborn son who needed me. When he then left a few days later, I was an empty shell. I did my best for Gringotts and my clients, but I was simply going through the motions. That all changed the day you appeared on my desk. I suddenly had a son who needed me again. The goblin's gaze shifted slightly to Hermione, all there seeing the unshed tears in the corners of Barchoke's eyes. I know you are truly my daughter, because that feeling returned with a vengeance when you fell. A large part of me was missing again, only to be repaired by Harry screaming for a healer. I am not ashamed to say Dan and I clung to each other like a couple of scared little tots who were afraid of the dark. That continued right up until we got confirmation from the healer that you had survived. Then things got a bit crazy. Dan wasn't the only one wiping moisture from his eyes. I was jumping up and down like mad while hugging Ragnarok. Only his guards doing the same prevented me being beheaded. Apparently our girl here is something of a celebrity in the nation, a well-loved one at that. Taking a deep breath, he then continued with what he wanted to say. Your mother and I have been talking about the marriage issue too. The only thing against us accepting this outright is the age we know both of you currently are. Since you certainly behave and physically appear older, we have decided just to ignore the numbers. Having witnessed what happened on that battlefield, I can certainly understand Harry not wanting to be parted from Hermione for the foreseeable future. Rather than have you sneaking about behind our backs, we give you our blessing, though the wedding next summer will still go ahead as planned. This was soon confirmed by Emma. I know you are both sensible and have major plans for your future. Let's just make sure Jamie is a good bit older before you make him an uncle. Harry kissed his brother on the forehead before carefully leaning into Hermione and capturing her lips. He'd always intended spending the night with Hermione, but here they were being given oh so precious permission by their parents to do so. I don't really know what to say, except thanks. Dan summed it up for all three parents. In a choice between a new baby or another battle, we'll take babies every time. Please you too. My heart couldn't take going through that again. No more battles. Dad, it's over. I have no intention of fighting any more battles. I still hope to keep our morning training up, though. It should also help me get this shoulder back in action. I'm pretty sure we're finished with hammering ourselves 4 times a week, however. Harry agreed with his mate. I hope the only battles we fight in the future are diplomatic ones. We've been taught you only fight when there are no other alternatives. It's going to be father's, and then my job to make sure it never comes to that again. Now that was something all of them could accept and readily agree on. Ooh, it wasn't the pain from where her arm was now missing that had Bella in such a state. Nor was it the loss of her mate and their master. Bella was certain she would be joining them soon. No, it was the uncertainty over her beautiful baby boy that had her climbing the walls with anxiety. She'd known Augustus was dead before she'd been stunned. Just the demeanor of those who woke her in this cell told Bella their master had suffered the same fate. The instant she regained her senses, Bella began reciting Marvolo's location, irrespective of what question she was asked. The truth serum had soon followed, with Bella spilling every secret she knew, though she fought it to keep repeating her baby's location. Then nothing. Apart from passing food and drink into her cell, she'd had no contact with anyone. Shouting the instant the hatch opened brought no results either. Bella was going crazy thinking of her little Marvolo, hungrily crying for his mummy and no one attending to him. Bellatrix Lestrange was a cruel, sadistic bitch of a witch. She was far more likely to be proud of that fact, rather than attempt to deny it. Bella thought the torture she was undergoing at the moment was worse than anything she'd ever dished out to her hapless victims. This not knowing the fate of her baby was killing the doting mother a piece at a time. The cell door opened to reveal Mad-Eye, a black aura and her pink-haired niece. You're Carmen with us. Please believe that if you try anything, you'll be missing another limb when it's time for your sentence. Bella certainly believed Moody wouldn't hesitate to do something like that. She couldn't resist having a verbal pop at her niece, though, as they walked along the corridor. You are still too weak to win this war. Using stunners in a fight just emphasizes you don't have the stomach for this battle. Tonks, however, was more than ready for her aunt. She also knew what was to follow here today. When a schoolgirl can cut you down with a blade, I thought a stunner was appropriate. I also stopped that schoolgirl from finishing the job, purely because I didn't want Padma having your death on her hands. The couple had already dealt with Rookwood, and the Longbottom family would have cherished their newest addition even more if she had put her blade through your chest too. I just thought the ministry should deal with vermin like you. It's actually what they pay me for. All 3 auras could see Bella was desperate to attack Tonks for that. It was never going to happen, though. With her remaining arm attached to the restraining belt around her waist, that option for retaliation was not available. Her ankles were also shackled, a 15-inch tether meaning she could move no faster than a shuffle. With a trio of wands on her, Bella wouldn't be doing anything they didn't want her to do. She was led into a room and fastened securely to a chair. Moody couldn't resist a parting comment as he and Shaq left Tonks with her. If I had my way, this wouldn't be happening. You never showed your victims the merest scrap of mercy. You shouldn't be receiving any now. The minister says that's why we're better than you and why we won in the end. Personally, I would rather see you die without knowing, Tarkin, that anguish to your grave. That might be because I've seen enough of the poor bastards who you sent to theirs Or maybe it's time for me to retire before I become like the people I hate the most. Tonks stood with her back against the wall, ignoring her aunt's taunts and waiting for the fireworks to begin. She didn't have long to wait. Elspeth Parkinson entered the interview room with Sissy's arm around her waist and a toddler in her arms. It was like a bolt of lightning passing through Bella. "Marvelo, my baby. Mummy's here, son. These murdering bastards killed your father, but Mummy's still here." Elspeth held the sleeping child lovingly in her arms. He'd been spelled to nap so as not to cause the toddler the slightest hint of distress. "He's not your son anymore, nor is that despicable name still attached to this beautiful baby boy. This is Bruce Parkinson, our son." That Sissy bent to lovingly kiss the baby's head, before then doing the same to Elspeth's lips set Bella off like a rocket. "I will not have my gorgeous boy raised by a couple of witches. I don't give a shit how pure your blood is. My son will need a strong male in his life if he's one day going to rule this country." "Oh, I agree, Bella. Our little Bruce is gorgeous. We called him Bruce after the statue your master was finally defeated under. They burned Tom's body just where it fell. Bruce here will also have plenty of strong male figures in his life to aspire to. Draco, Sirius, and Severus are just the first three that sprung to mind. He's about the same age as Astrid Black and Jamie Granger, too. We're hoping all three can be friends." "Sissy, you bastard. I was forced to marry that poofter Rodolphus while you got stuck with Lucius. It was only Augustus that taught me what a real man was like. Don't do this to my son. We don't need another poof in the family." "I certainly don't want my boy mixing with the wrong sort either, creatures and mudbloods." This had Sissy shaking her head. "He will grow up loved, with two mothers, a brother and a sister. His sexuality will be something for Bruce to decide when he's older. We didn't get to choose who we loved. I guarantee he will get to make that choice for himself, just as he will get to choose who his friends are too." Elspeth glanced at Sissy before addressing Bella again. "You tortured my husband to death, and I hated you for it. In his own way, Edmund Parkinson was a good man. You took my husband from me. Now I've got your sister and your son. I'm happier than I've ever been, and certainly think I got the better of the deal." Tonks then really stirred the cauldron. "Did you know your beloved master had set the wards around your son to fail if Tom died? Bill Weasley led a team of curse breakers, warriors and auras to your hideout, just in time to stop a bloody great snake eating that baby. It was in the corridor leading to Bruce's room when the warriors made short work of it. My mother and Aunt Sissy are his two closest living relatives. The ministry have already awarded custody of Bruce to Sissy and Elspeth, two widows who have paid a high price for this war." Tonks wasn't sure if her aunt had heard a word she said. All her attention was focused on the baby in Elspeth's arms. Bella was now struggling like a maniac in her futile attempts to get free, foaming at the mouth as her promises of retribution against those who would harm her son got darker and darker. Sissy led Elspeth and the still sleeping Bruce out the room before glancing over her shoulder at the thing her sister had become. "I won't be at your sentencing, Bella, so this is goodbye. I'll leave you with my promise to look after your son and love him as if he were my own." When Moody and Shaq returned, they were left with no other option but to stun a now crazed Bella and levitate the unconscious witch back to her cell. Seeing her condition drew a smirk from Mad-Eye. "Perhaps I was wrong. It looks like this bitch got a dose of her own medicine after all. Now all that's left is to give her an overdose of Veritaserum tomorrow. Isn't there going to be a trial?" "Tonks, she's already had the death sentence passed on her before you took her down. We have enough confessions of torture and murders to see that sentence carried out a dozen times over. Tomorrow is nothing more than a public execution." Seeing this troubled the young Aura, Shaq tried to put her mind at rest. "This isn't like Sirius Black, Tonks. This piece of shit is really, really guilty. I personally heard her confess to cutting a little girl's throat just because her last name was Potter. She also butchered Edmund Parkinson and Harry's aunt. We don't need the entire country hearing that. I wish I'd never heard it." Dumping Bella on the little bed in her cell, they removed the restraints and left her there. Tonks also decided she wouldn't be there tomorrow when justice was finally done. This would be her goodbye to her crazy aunt. She had already arranged that, as soon as the trials were finished, Tonks was going on extended leave. With the Hogwarts term finishing at the end of the week, Remus would be free then too. Tonks had never looked forward so much to a summer in her life before. She also hoped to be pregnant by the end of it. Arthur always seemed to be busy with his new position. He may have gotten a large raise in salary, but he was having to work bloody hard for it. That he actually loved the work he was now doing meant Arthur hadn't enjoyed himself this much in years. He and Bill were briefing members of the Muggle government on how the battle had gone, and that the Potter killers were no more. There were copies of the Daily Prophet spread around the table, but all eyes were glued to the goblin viewer displaying Ragnar's memory of the fight. Bill had to adjust the volume control to a lower level when the goblins discovered Hermione had survived. As the memory faded, eyes moved to Graham Cole. "I think there are a few of us at this table who now owe you an apology, Graham. I'm sure I wasn't the only one who wondered if your report on these supposed kids had been magically enhanced. It was hard to tell from watching that memory which one of the five was the aura." After a few nods of agreement, their attention returned to the Weasleys. "Her Majesty's government would also like to offer an unreserved apology if we suggested either of your governments were in any way complacent in using what we considered children to fight this battle." Graham's report highlighted this couldn't be further from the truth. We just got to graphically witness that here today. Even with the foreknowledge that they all survived, that was still incredibly difficult to watch. A few here's were followed by a question. "Why did you ask us for help with technology when that viewer sitting there is more advanced than anything we passes? Being able to store and replay a memory is a wonderful invention." "This is Goblin device," Bill said. "As a people, they have a national archive of memories going back centuries. That does not take into account families who keep their own generation after generation. History is very important to the nation. They treasure it and teach it to the following generations. The young man you saw fighting there, Harry Crow, intends to attend one of your universities to study history and politics. His fiancée hopes to attend the same university to study law. Padma will apprentice under the nation's most prestigious potions master. While I don't think Neville had looked past the battle all four knew was coming." Stopping for a drink of water, Bill took a moment before continuing. "None of those four chose this. Voldemort is the one who believed in the prophecy and went after Harry, killing both his parents in his first attempt to murder him almost 14 years ago. Harry told his three friends the danger they might be in the first week he met them. All three wanted his friendship, so accepted the dangers. I have been teaching those four every Saturday and Sunday for the last 4 years. If there was any way I could have taken their place inside those wards, you have my solemn word that's where I would have been. Those four are like family to me, and family means everything to us." His father's hand on his arm stopped Bill saying any more. "You'll have to excuse us if we get rather emotional. We lived what you just watched and didn't have the benefit of already knowing the outcome. Myself, 4 of my sons, and a young lady who will soon become my daughter-in-law were all stood there, pouring everything we could into bringing those wards down. Penny actually fainted from relief on hearing that Hermione was alive. She was their prefect at the boarding school for 3 years, holidayed with them, and now works for Harry's father. This whole thing is very personal to us, but we're here to do a job." It was Arthur's turn to need a drink of water before he could continue. "We asked for help specifically with technology none of these three would know, therefore wouldn't guard against. Harry actually came up with a solution that worked brilliantly. We understood why the offer was withdrawn, but as you clearly saw, this was not an option we entered into lightly. Most of our people are celebrating the defeat of this Dark Lord. That does not include anyone who witnessed the battle. We all know how close we came to losing someone very dear to us. Had Hermione fallen, our 2 governments would have been in mourning. That's how close we came to losing. Make no mistake, defeating Voldemort and losing any one of those 5 would not have been a victory. We can all see that you have had a traumatic few days. Unfortunately, I am just about to add to that. Her Majesty is most anxious to hear how this went. I would ask if you could repeat your presentation for her." Neither Arthur or Bill felt they could refuse, which was why 2 Weasleys were soon in a government car and making the short trip to Buckingham Palace. The story that the Potter killers were no more broke in the Muggle press on Sunday. The story that was reported essentially being the truth. These killers had set a trap for Lord Potter, but he and his security forces had reversed the trap and ended the conflict. While two of the trio of terrorists had been killed outright, the third was not expected to live past the weekend. Lord Potter's party had taken some injuries, but nothing too serious. Like the rest of the country, and certainly most of Crawley, the Reverend Robert Richards studied the story intently. His intended sermon now lay forgotten as he scribbled down notes for a new one. This may be a national story, but it had touched Crawley. While the entire congregation had known the Dursleys and knew the Grangers, Robert now understood there would be a lot more to this story than what was reported here. He could also make a good guess just who those private security forces were. As he stood in church to begin today's service, Robert's entire face lit up as he noticed who just walked in the door. Too late, he realized why the group had deliberately arrived at this late time, obviously attempting to avoid attention. The Reverend Richard, staring at the door with a wide smile on his face, saw a few heads turning in that direction. A couple of gasps later, and the entire congregation was facing the church doors. Harry was standing there with Jamie in his arms, at Hermione's insistence. She loved him to bits, but his continual hovering to see she was all right had really began to grate on her nerves. Just because her arm was in a sling didn't mean she couldn't still do things for herself. That Harry constantly blamed himself for her injury wasn't helping either, giving him Jamie to look after allowed Hermione a break. It was also a solution that both boys were happy with too. Padma and Neville had come along as well, both liking the Reverend Richards. They were flanked by Dan and Emma, the trio of blacks bringing up the rear. Knowing this group would have wanted to avoid attention, Robert started speaking before the congregation broke into applause or something just as stupid. I was just thinking about you this morning and intended to lead the congregation in prayers for your safety. It would seem our prayers have been answered. Dan, Emma, Lord Potter, and Lord Black, it's delightful to see you and your families again. Jamie and Astrid are getting so big. This drew all eyes back onto the Reverend. The fact he knew everyone who had just walked into his church was a surprise to all in his congregation. We have, of course, known the Grangers for many years. Due to circumstances beyond their control, the family were unable to attend church. That didn't mean their church couldn't go to them, or should that be their minister. I have stayed in their beautiful home in Kingussie, christening their son, Jamie, back in September of last year. I returned during the Christmas holidays to preside over the marriage of two family friends. Next summer sees a double wedding on the estate, Lord Potter and Hermione being one of the couples I'll join together that day. Let us all rejoice that they are once more safely back amongst us by singing the first hymn. They had almost reached the first chorus before the congregation got into its singing stride, so shocked were they at their reverend's revelations. With Hermione sitting on one side of him, Sirius on the other, Jamie on his knee, and Astrid taking the same position with her father, Harry was very happy to be in church. He kept waking up during the night in a cold sweat, only discovering Hermione was laying right beside him and still breathing, allowing the possibility of sleep to return. Harry knew he was driving Hermione crazy, but both also knew he couldn't help it. They couldn't wait for all this to be over and then head for the island. Perhaps there he would be able to relax. After the service, all knew the interrogation would begin. While Dan and Emma were busy telling everyone they would be moving to Scotland permanently, the younger members of the family were answering different questions. You're getting married, Hermione. She thought for a second about the terrible joke Harry had coined and decided not to go there. Yes, Harry arranged the date with the Reverend Richards when he was up in Kingussie to christen my brother. August 4th next summer, the wedding will be on our estate. What happened to your shoulder? Oh, I was shot in the shoulder. My body armor absorbed most of it, though. The sling is to stop me using my arm before it's properly healed. This halted the questions for a moment. Harry standing beside her, still with Jamie in his arms, meant Hermione could cope with anything today. So you're not coming back to Crawley? No, Kingussie is our home now. After our wedding, we'll be searching to see what university we'll apply to. It's been nice seeing you all again, but we have a long journey in front of us now. With that, the Grangers' association with Crawley ended. They would certainly be keeping in touch with Reverend Richards. He'd already been invited to spend some time with them on the island, but there was nothing else here for them now. Dan, Emma, and Hermione were all different people from when they lived here. Kingussie was home to all of them now, something Jamie would certainly benefit from. Ooh, the three older Longbottoms were at a different kind of ceremony. Bellatrix Lestraine was led into the sparse facility. The charges she'd been found guilty of read out before an overdose of Veritaserum was administered. Once she became unconscious, the murderer was taken away to die in her cell. So ended the life of the Dark Lord's last follower. Now all that remained were the trials of Umbridge and Dumbledore. Those would be far grander affairs, though, and since the wards would allow them to enter, be held in the Wisengamot chamber. After Rita's explosive expose today, neither Augusta, Alice nor Frank would be surprised if their sentence was the same as the one Lestrange had just received. When they thought about it, none of them were bothered by that prospect at all. Dumbledore's image as a light wizard had been well and truly destroyed. And thanks for reading our N2 next chapter, both trials and end of term. There will then be a chapter where we time skip to get a glimpse of some significant events in their lives. Finally, still on schedule for it being the 5th of June, a small epilogue to end the tale. I rarely know what I'm going to write until I pick up my iPad, so there is still a bit of flexibility in there. I am very nearly at the point where I write the end, though thank you for sticking with this story. 104. Time to Pay the Piper. Harry Crow, Chapter 104. Albus sat alone in his cell, deep under the ministry. Since he would be representing himself in his trial, a list of the charges Albus would be facing was sitting in front of him. The ministry clearly thought they had him this time, but Albus could see there was really only one damning action he needed to talk his way out of. Placing that stunner on the portkey would be enough to see him convicted of assisting in the attempted murder of the boy. No one could seriously doubt that there would be any other outcome from that matchup. He currently had two ways to approach this dilemma: claim it was to give Harry a painless ending, or deny all knowledge of placing the spell. It would really only be his word against Severus, since all the magical evidence would disappear after the stunner was triggered. It was something he was going to have to give a lot of thought to. Then again, he wasn't exactly in a position to do anything else at the moment except prepare his defense. The extended family portkeyed from Crawley to Hogwarts and arrived just as Sunday lunch was about to commence. They were all made welcome and sat as the four usual did for lunch, with their friends and the Potter scholars. Jamie loved all the company, though Astrid was rather used to it. She would spend time like this at least once a week with her godfather. The four confirmed they would be missing the last week of Hogwarts, but there would be enough of the family staying in the castle to let everyone know what was decided today about holidays. One thing was already certain. Both Harry and Neville's birthdays would be celebrated on the island with a massive party, and everyone currently sitting at the table was invited. Harry, Minister Oblance, contacted me to say the Bulgarian Ministry of Magic voted unanimously to honor all five of you. He was hoping a date for doing that could be arranged soon. Thanks, Victor. Minister Murphy has already made the same offer from the Irish Ministry. Don't forget, Harry. We'll have the ministry's summer ball, and the Queen also wants to meet us. They're both talking about some kind of award as well. It was just too good an opportunity to miss for Padma. Don't listen to Misery Guts here. Hermione's just worried her chest won't be big enough for all these awards they keep throwing at us. Even Hermione chuckled along with the laughter, but this time Harry had the last laugh. I happen to think my wife's chest is absolutely perfect, just as it is. This had everyone looking at the couple for confirmation, until Hermione displayed the Potter matriarch ring. We are considered of age in two of the three societies we live in. Therefore, Harry is now my husband. Our wedding still goes ahead next summer at Kingassy, though. That will then make us legal in all three. Hermione was fine announcing they were married. She just wasn't about to discuss the mechanics of how that came to be. There were first year present, and the older ones could work the details out for themselves. Due to her injury, she found herself receiving gentle hugs of congratulations, while Harry found his hand being shaken quite a lot. Neville didn't miss Dan and Emma sitting there smiling, or the look of longing on Padma's face, so there would soon be a discussion between the Pattles and the Longbottoms. Padma had been sneaking into his room the last few nights as they drew comfort from each other over what they had just faced. Declaring themselves married too would permanently solve their sneaking around problem. Hermione was having a quick whispered conversation with Padma on that very subject. We didn't even ask for this. Father offered, then Mum and Dad agreed. We weren't about to refuse, and have no intention of hiding this either. The plan was to announce it to the rest of the family later today. Harry, though, has been wanting to shout it to the world since he put this ring on my finger last night. Sapphire and Barchoke arrived amid all the merriment. She hadn't known about this development either, and was just as excited for them. As Hermione's new ring was being admired, Harry asked Fleur for a quiet word. Roger was invited along too. Standing in a quieter corner of the hall, Harry got straight to the point. Since Gabrielle is attending Hogwarts next year, I want to put a name forward for a Potter scholarship. I just wanted your opinion before I did so. Zat is sweet, awry, but the Delacour family is a wealthy one. This drew a smile from Harry. When the scholarship was first proposed, how financially equipped the family in question was to send their child to Hogwarts was one of our main concerns. That is not now the case. Those families have the safety net of the sponsorship program to help. The scholarship is awarded to those we think would benefit most from becoming part of the family we are building here. I think Gabrielle falls firmly into that category. She would attend a school where friends would already be waiting on her, and there is a comprehensive support system already in place. Roger and I would still be here too. Zat would really be a dream for Gabby. It is odd for Avila to make friends. My father Zoe would probably insist on paying something. I happen to know Avila who made loads of friends at Hogwarts. I'm delighted to be considered one of them. If your father wishes, the Delacours could offer a scholarship in Gabrielle's name to a witch or wizard who couldn't otherwise afford 7 years of Beauxbatons. That would also replace the student Madame Maxine is being denied by Gabrielle coming here. That is a wonderful idea, but are you sure, awry? His gaze drifted to Luna. She was chatting with their friends, and Colin was at her side. Luna lost her mother, and Zeno wasn't coping too well with that loss either. It was like a little lost waif the first time we met. Just having friends allowed her to grow into the wonderful young woman you see sitting there. She is like a sister to us, and Emma has practically adopted her. Luna is family, simple as that. Pauline, too, has benefited greatly from being a Potter scholar. It completely removed any stigma over what her father tried to do. I want the same level of acceptance for Gabrielle. To be able to see her happy and reach her full potential is all we ask. Oh, awry, how can I say none to that? I will write home today and let my parents know. Thank you so much. Hey, just trying to help out a friend. With Gabrielle attending Hogwarts, we'll be able to keep in touch with her big sister. I know that is something Roger wants to do. Thanks, Harry, but I can do my own chatting up. I think you should get back there to your wife and leave my girlfriend alone. All three of them couldn't help chuckling at Roger's comment, though both he and Fleur had already discussed what they would be doing when she returned to France. Neither wanted their relationship to end, and there would be a fair amount of traveling done over the summer by the couple. The family meeting was a happy affair. All recognized the black cloud of impending doom that had menacingly lurked over them was now lifted. There were only 2 trials left to deal with. Amelia had sent word with Augusta, Frank, and Alice that those trials would begin tomorrow, and just whose presence would be required. Actually, planning any holidays was proving a nightmare, as there would be 3 ministry events to attend, whatever the nation had up its sleeve, and then the Queen's request needed to be factored into any plans too. They might be able to influence when the first 4 happened, but the Queen worked to her own calendar. When she set a date and time, then that was when you arrived at Buckingham Palace. Okay, Harry and Neville's birthdays are sacrosanct. Everything else gets arranged around those dates. To be honest, I really just want to relax this summer. Moving between Kingussie and the island would suit me fine. Maybe next year Jamie and Astrid will be old enough to enjoy Florida or some other locations. The island's beach and Kingussie's play park will probably keep them happy for now. Hearing his name mentioned, Jamie smiled at his sister and attempted her name. Hemi, while smiling back at her brother. All could hear the determination in her voice. Family rule, only those aged 2 and under are allowed to shorten my name. No, serious, mental age doesn't count. That cracked Barchoke, Sapphire, and Harry up. You finally got it. That was pure goblin humor. Oh, Dad, please shoot me now. This just made the goblins in the room laugh all the harder. When Jamie and Astrid laughed along too, the rest of the family couldn't help but join in. Joshua Log wasn't laughing. he felt sick. Then again, he'd felt sick since the ministry had contacted him to represent Dolores. Oh, how he would have loved to say no, but Dolores knew of his indiscretions and wouldn't hesitate to bring him down with her. What was making him sick, though, was today's issue of the Prophet. It blasted all their arguments clean out of the air. The ministry, and now the country, knew every tiny detail of what had transpired, including what they had considered to be private meetings. He watched as the color drained from Dola's face as she read details that blew their decidedly feeble defense apart. With only Dumbledore left alive, she had intended to portray herself in as positive a light as possible during these meetings. They had decided to go as far as saying Dolores had been tortured to force her to comply with Voldemort's scheme. She would open her robes and let everyone see her scarred breasts, if that was what it took to get out of this predicament. That idea was now as dead as those Dolores was sure couldn't contradict her version of these events. How could they possibly know all this? I have no idea. I'm also assuming from your reactions that it is all accurate, in which case there is no other alternative but to plead guilty. This did not sit well with Dolores. Am I supposed to throw myself on the Wisengamot's mercy? We both know there won't be any coming in my direction. I had hoped you were better than this. Both our futures are at stake here. Dolores, I can only work with what I have. The Prophet just left us with nothing. It was always going to be a struggle to keep you out of Azkaban. The entire country being informed of what actually happened during these meetings just made that task impossible. Since the ministry made its position on Voldemort and his supporters crystal clear, what we really need to avoid now is the charge of treason and the penalty that brings with it. That was something she hadn't considered and didn't want to consider now. They couldn't do that, could they? Voldemort didn't just want to kill the boy, he wanted to rule the country. He never hid his ultimate aims, and those aims are treason. Anyone assisting him in those aims could easily face that charge. Joshua pointed to the open newspaper. They clearly have evidence that you did assist him, evidence we can't counter because it's the truth. If the ministry really wanted to, they could make the charge of treason stick. He gave her a moment to mull this over before continuing. If you plead guilty, we can still play the caught between two powerful wizards card. You went to Dumbledore for help. Dumbledore said he had a plan to solve everything. Why wouldn't you go along with that? You didn't approach the ministry because your professional relationship with Fudge and Bones led you to believe, rightly or wrongly, there wouldn't be any help forthcoming from that direction. Our task now is damage limitation. Avoid the treason charge at all cost and hope for a sentence that's less than the rest of your life in Azkaban. Dolores sat there, the tears now freely running down her cheeks as the reality of her situation kicked in. Dolores' instincts were screaming for her to fight this with everything she had. They couldn't do this to her. One glance at the Prophet in front of Dolores confirmed she had nothing. It was obvious they could do whatever they liked to her. She was well and truly screwed. A nod of acceptance brought a sigh of relief from Joshua. He never wanted to have Dolores answering questions in the chamber. Now she would quietly sit there, appearing broken without even having to act, while he handled everything. By pleading guilty, though still pushing as much of the blame onto Dumbledore as possible, Joshua hoped to avoid the treason charge. Anything other than life in Azkaban for Dolores would be an unexpected bonus. Amelia watched on as the chair containing the chained and now sobbing witch sank into the floor. Her gaze then sought out Harry, his slight nod indicating he thought they had done the right thing. While not as severe as it could have been, a 20-year spell in Azkaban was by no means a light sentence. If Dolores survived it, she would certainly be a changed witch at the end of her stretch. The entire chamber seemed to recognize that Dolores was nothing more than the appetizer. The main course was just about to be served. As Albus was representing himself, he couldn't really be chained in the accused's chair like Umbridge. Any thoughts he might have had about making any kind of powerful entrance to the chamber he once presided over, however, were immediately and comprehensively quashed. He was led into the chamber at multiple wand points, wearing drab prison-issue robes. His original robes had a few bullet holes in them, along with quite a lot of Albus blood soaked into the material. Dumbledore was also shackled at the wrists and ankles. These restraints would not only hinder his movement, but actually suppressed his magical abilities too, though there was no intention of letting him anywhere near a wand. Since Dumbledore was representing himself, He didn't have someone like Joshua to warn him that the truth was all over today's prophet, including how the Bulgarian minister of magic was brought into the secret, so as not to sack Albus after his debacle at the first task. Albus had been kept incommunicado and didn't even know how the final battle had unfolded. The chamber was hostile before Amos began reading out the charges Dumbledore faced. Taking a deep breath, Albus answered, "Not guilty," before setting out on his defense. "Members of the Wisengamot, you all know who I am. Having worked side by side with the vast majority of you, I hope to put that familiarity to good use today. I'll start with a simple question. When have you ever known me to do anything without a good reason?" This was greeted with silence, encouraging Albus to continue. "I will admit some of my actions may seem strange, even severe, but I can assure everyone in this chamber there was a very good reason for those actions. We were dealing with a situation that was controlled by a prophecy. Until that prophecy was fulfilled, all our hands were tied. Prophecy is this: the one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches. Born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the seventh month dies. And the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not. And either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord will be born as the seventh month dies." In the silence that followed that revelation, Amos asked a question. Would the accused like that prophecy to be entered as evidence to his trial? Of course I would. Do you have any means of corroborating that this is an actual prophecy, and not something you manufactured whilst sitting in your cell awaiting trial? Albus stared at Amos, as if he had two heads before the chief warlock explained his stance. A true prophecy isn't remembered by the seer who makes it. Did anyone else hear it? Albus had spotted Severus sitting behind Amelia Bones. He couldn't help hear, though, since he didn't know the prophecy in its entirety. It should be stored in the Hall of Prophecy. This had Amelia intervening. Anticipating something like this, a search was instigated of the Hall of Prophecies, a search that generated no results. Those words triggered a memory for Albus, his first meeting with Barchoke. Harry must have it. He and his father knew about it. Turning his attention to Harry, Amos asked what might have seemed a stupid question. "Centurion Crow, you are under no obligation to confirm or deny the existence of this prophecy. Would you like to say anything?" Taking a quick glance at Hermione, still with her arm in a sling, Harry didn't hold back. "Chief Warlock, this man had information that could have helped us. Instead, he chose to weave a stunner into the Dark Lord's portkey, and my wife ended up getting hit with Voldemort's killing curse. Dumbledore has had his own agenda all the way through this conflict, going right back to before my parents were murdered. He's never helped me or mine. I have no intention of helping him in any way now." Dumbledore was still reeling from the wife and killing curse news. That was why he forgot to deny he had anything to do with that stunner. It was imperative the prophecy was entered as evidence, otherwise the issue about that spell was immaterial anyway. Albus was racking his brain for a solution to his dilemma when help came from an unlikely source. "Chief Warlock, I am prepared to allow that to be admitted as evidence." His relief, though, was short-lived, as Amelia outlined her price. "Providing Dumbledore allows this book to be entered as evidence too." Holding up a copy of The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore, started a few sniggers inside the chamber. Albus, though, wasn't smiling, as Amelia continued. "I have stated in this very chamber that I couldn't find one untruth in this entire biography, and the accused here didn't contradict me at that time. I again offer him the chance to point out the lies, or allow this book to be entered as the truth and vital evidence in this case." Albus was between the proverbial rock and a hard place. Without the prophecy being admitted as evidence, his case was already lost. The price of that admission, though, was a high one. In the end, it was a price he simply had to pay. Signaling his acceptance, Albus was then asked by Amos to explain his interpretation of this prophecy to the chamber. Rattled at how things were unfolding, but feeling he was back on safer ground here, Albus gave a basic explanation, intending to go into greater detail later as he justified each of his actions. The first part is rather simple. It could initially have indicated either of two children, both born at the end of July. Voldemort made his choice, though, and marked a child that Halloween evening. And either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives, is also self-explanatory. One had to kill the other before there was any chance of ending this war. Again, Albus was taking the silence as proof he was being believed, until Amos broke it. You never mentioned this power the Dark Lord knows not. Going for dramatic effect, Albus lowered his head slightly and managed to inflict just the right amount of sadness into his voice. That power should have been love, something Tom Riddle certainly knew nothing about, but Harry's upbringing with the goblins robbed him of this. Harry Potter would have recognized that sacrificing himself for the greater good of wizardkind was not only the right thing to do, but really the only thing to do. As we all witnessed just a moment ago, Harry Crow has no forgiveness in his heart. The goblins made him into a warrior, then gained great political advantage by promoting him to the rank of centurion. Harry and his goblin masters would see us all perish to achieve what they want. Albus expected the boy to explode. Those rabid rantings would surely further reinforce his case against Harry Crow. He got his explosion. It just didn't come from Harry. That is the biggest pile of dragon shit I have ever heard spoken in this chamber. Considering some of the shit we've had proposed in here over the years, that's really saying something. Amelia's outburst raised a few twitters, but she was only getting started. Unlike you, Dumbledore, I know the outstanding young man you tried your damnedest to condemn to an early death. He has a wife who loves him so much. Hermione completed their blood bonding so she could fight by his side, knowing those wards would then accept her as well. Harry loves and trusts her in equal measure. Thanks to you, he entered the battle stunned and relied on Hermione to revive him. They have friends who sent their blood to Voldemort too, refusing to let this couple face the challenge alone. Dumbledore couldn't hide his shock at this, and Amelia went for the jugular. Her close friendship with the group, and special permission from both the Ministry and the nation, allowed the creation of a blood-bound portkey that put one of my brave auras right in there with the four friends. These now famous five took down Rookwood, defeated Lestrain, and vaporized Voldemort's wand arm before we could get those wards down and finish the job. Only one other person wanted the Centurion to become a sacrifice. Voldemort offered to leave the country if we did his killing for him. I was very proud this chamber unanimously rejected that idea, and it sickens me you seem to be setting Harry up like a pig to be slaughtered. This actually generated some applause inside the chamber, though Albus certainly wasn't clapping. That Harry had defeated Voldemort was almost as shocking as discovering they appeared to have been onto his plans from the very beginning. Amelia, though, was just getting warmed up. It was time Albus Dumbledore discovered just how much things had changed in Britain since his absence. Could you tell this chamber how Voldemort supposedly marked the Centurion as his equal? By giving him a scar. Albus' words died in his throat as the flaw in that statement became obvious. Scar. I don't see any scar. I have seen Harry cut as he fenced with his friends. I hardly think that qualifies as marking him either, do you? Your interpretation of this prophecy doesn't stand up to even the most basic of examinations. Do you want me to tell you why that is? Recognizing a rhetorical question, Albus knew there was no way to stop Amelia telling everyone her opinion. At no point does this prophecy mention the Dark Lord by name. You just assumed it meant Voldemort. Madam Bones, are you suggesting that this prophecy could possibly refer to someone else? Yes, Dumbledore, I am. You. Among the shocked gasps and angry growls, only one voice was raised in Dumbledore's defense, his own. That's preposterous. A cool Amelia just twisted the knife. Is it really? You insisted the prophecy become evidence in this case. I intend to offer a different interpretation of its meaning from yours. It will then be up to this chamber to decide which version they believe. That's how our system works, Dumbledore. We don't withhold crucial information and plot to get innocent teenagers murdered. This was certainly not something Albus had thought possible, far less prepared a defense against. It was clear from the onset, though, that Amelia was well prepared, and also out for blood. We need to start right at the very beginning, before some people sitting in this chamber were born. A smile to the four teens was at odds with the verbal dagger she plunged into Dumbledore's heart. Can you tell the chamber, whilst headmaster of Hogwarts, how many interviews of prospective staff did you hold in the Hog's Head Tavern? What? Oh, come now, Dumbledore. It's a simple question requiring a one-word answer. Bearing in mind that even Tom Riddle's interview for the defense post took place inside Hogwarts, it surely can't be that many. Would that one-word answer actually be one? Taking into consideration, of course, we would certainly expect the names to match whatever number you give us for verification. Albus was left floundering, allowing Amelia to push on and leave the entire chamber with the impression that Dumbledore's answer actually was one without him actually admitting it. We are then expected to believe that a handsome young potions prodigy just happened to be hanging about the Hog's Head, an establishment frequented by a rather coarse and craggy clientele even back then. This same wizard just happened to hear this prophecy. Oh, what a pair of coincidences. After being discovered hearing this absolutely crucial to the war effort piece of information, Severus Snape was sent on his way with nothing more than a slapped wrist, with that information still in his head. Every single person in this chamber can instantly see the necessity of using an Obliviate on this young wizard. In all my years in the DMLE, I honestly can't think of a better case for using that spell, but you didn't. You are also on record as saying you never do anything without a good reason. What was your reason that night? That's not how it happened. Ignoring Albus, Amelia pushed on with her point. Could it have been that the prophecy was just a bunch of useless mutterings from a seer of questionable abilities, unless Voldemort heard and believed it? After Severus Snape came to you looking for help, you then blackmailed him into working for you, a tactic you attempted on Bill Weasley and also used successfully on Dolores Umbridge, and those are only the ones we know about. You are making large jumps with your assumptions there, Madam Bones. Amelia then hit the protesting Albus with some damning facts he couldn't refute. I, like you, was also in this chamber when a certain young goblin asked who had cast the Fidelius on his parents' cottage. You kept silent, knowing all along it was you. When that cottage was attacked and destroyed, did you rush to aid the Potters? No, you sent a gamekeeper who had his wand snapped and was barred from performing magic. Hagrid already had strict instructions from you what to do with Harry. How could you possibly know that baby would survive? You denied a godfather his legal right to care for his godson, and then said nothing while knowing Sirius couldn't have told Voldemort where the Potters were hiding. From where I'm standing, Dumbledore, those actions are all pretty dark. Albus had no comeback, stating that he trusted Hagrid with his life, wouldn't win any points here. Amelia, though, was relentless as she pursued her argument. You claim a scar that was healed in a matter of days was the Dark Lord marking Harry as his equal. I disagree. I know the Centurion very well, being rejected by wizard kind, and then the Muggles whose doorstep you left him on left a mark on Harry far deeper than any scar. It is also undeniable the Dursleys made it crystal clear they wanted nothing to do with the magical world in general, and the Potters in particular. You dumping that baby on their doorstep directly led to the entire family being tortured to death by Voldemort and his Death Eaters. That wouldn't have happened if they had just done what they were told and kept the baby. So, not following the great Albus Dumbledore's instructions, supplied in the form of a letter I have here, and adopting a wizard child the family had already made clear they wanted nothing to do with, led to their death. Yes. Amelia tried not to appear satisfied that Dumbledore had just admitted being partly responsible for the murder of 3 people. Well, by his own admission, there are 3 more deaths we can also lay at the door of Dumbledore's manipulations. As his equal, what does that mean? We all know Dumbledore is a transfiguration master and an alchemist of some renown. Harry is already an animagus and also directly responsible for a new transfiguration course now being taught at Hogwarts. His class will be the first to sit the new OWL exam next summer. I'm reliably informed the practical content of that exam falls just short of the current NEWT1. Harry is also something of a potions prodigy. Master Pitsley, assessing his abilities, is already well beyond NEWT. I can certainly see the similarities. It was clear to Albus that the chamber could too. He just couldn't think how to counter this argument, and Amelia was relentless. We all witnessed the Centurion destroy Dumbledore's wand in this very chamber. He defeated you again at the Yule Ball, and let's not forget the basilisk fiasco that saw you leave the country. These 4 teenagers not only solved the riddle, they opened the chamber, defeated the biggest bloody basilisk the world has ever seen, saved the life of the hostage, and helped ensure only the guilty were punished. The compassion the centurion displays is helping to change our world. Harry insists only the guilty are punished. Could that be why he has no compassion or forgiveness for you? Madam, you're taking a few facts and painting a picture to suit your needs. Amelia jumped all over Dumbledore's protest. You took a few lines, supposedly mumbled by a witch who can barely see past the end of her nose, and proceeded to map out people's lives so they would fit your interpretation of it. What I am doing is due legal process, and done in front of the people who make our laws. What you did was secretive, manipulative, and something I intend to prove here today, criminal. Taking a moment to control her anger, Amelia then continued to build her case against Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore considers himself a great leader, but the facts don't support that. A great leader listens to the opinion of those around him, shares vital information, and reaches decisions for the greater good of those who have placed their lives in his hands. That is not a description that can be applied to Dumbledore. How many of your Order of the Phoenix survived the war against Voldemort? You said it yourself, Madam Bones. It was war. Every one of those deaths weighs heavily upon me. I know you lost family, Amelia. Ignoring his familiarity, she continued building her case. In this, Harry is not your equal but vastly superior. This I offer as the power the Dark Lord knows not. Unlike Dumbledore, Harry Crow is a born leader. Amelia then began giving examples of what she meant. We have all seen memories of how events in the Chamber of Secrets played out. What is not so well known is that Harry was responsible for those extra ghosts being in the castle. He shared their suspicions with the Lady Ravenclaw, and that resulted in a lot of lives being saved, some of them auras, and also included my niece. When watching that event unfold, we saw Harry immediately summoned reinforcements and listened to his troops' opinions at every turn. There was never any doubt who was leading that rescue mission, however, and he brought everyone out alive. She needed a drink of water before covering the next bit. When Voldemort and all his Death Eaters attacked Bones Manor that new year, Harry was again decisive. He led the attack on Voldemort while I organized the defense of my home. In a single battle, the Death Eater threat was effectively destroyed, and we didn't lose a single person. Like everyone who was present at Voldemort's final battle, that event will stay with me for the rest of my life. A genuine smile was aimed at Hermione, and the entire chamber could hear the sincerity in Amelia's voice. You have no idea how pleased I am to report that once more we suffered no casualties. Albus Dumbledore wasn't at that battle, though. He was already under arrest at Hogwarts. Amelia then summed her argument up. In building a case for Albus Dumbledore being the Dark Lord of this prophecy, we need to consider the facts. In the deaths of James and Lily Potter, his negligence, if not outright manipulations, led to their demise. He then left a baby, barely a year old and with a Horcrux in his head, on a Muggle doorstep. This action painted a large target over this Muggle family, one that eventually led to their deaths too. Did Dumbledore spend the next decade searching for the Horcruxes he at least suspected were out there? No. Instead, he hatched and attempted a plot to separate an 11-year-old boy from the only parent he had ever known. Only the Sorting Hat's intervention stopped Harry Crow being lost to us forever. This wasn't something that was widely known, and quills could be heard scratching on parchment as members took notes. As we have all read in the Prophet, and then heard confirmed at the previous trial, Dumbledore not only knew what Voldemort was planning, but assisted in every way he could. It was Dumbledore who suggested a method for collecting the blood. He arranged the purchase of the books needed, and then placed his own modification on the portkey, all with the clear intention of causing the death of Centurion Crow. Dumbledore knew the location of the final battle, but again kept that vital information to himself. We were left with no option but to forcibly recover that information, a decision that certainly played a part on us, suffering no casualties when ending this war. She then spoke to the chamber in her final summation. Albus Dumbledore faces many charges here today. Being a Dark Lord isn't one of them. My intention is not to add that charge to the list, rather show how easy it is to make those words of the prophecy fit whatever scenario you choose. Dumbledore has already admitted he chose a certain interpretation of this prophecy, and no doubt based all his actions on that. I would like this chamber to judge that he was wrong to do so, and that this then in no way excuses these criminal actions he is charged with today. Allowing Severus Snape to use legilimens on an injured Dumbledore was a greater good situation. Letting that same wizard inform Voldemort of this prophecy certainly was not. As she sat back down, Amelia took Albus' hopes with her. His arguments that had sounded so strong sitting in his cell now seemed at best weak in the harsh reality of the Wisengamot chamber. There was no plan B, though, so Albus just had to do his best with what he had. He could see, however, that every one of his arguments was now being compared to the version Amelia had previously given, and not favorably. Just by installing doubt, Amelia had done her job. Albus needed the vast majority of the chamber to accept his interpretation of the prophecy, and therefore excuse his actions. That clearly wasn't happening here. Even finishing with "everything I have done was for the greater good of wizardkind" had little effect. Amelia had even taken that away from him with her earlier prime example. The members of the Wisengamot then asked a few questions to clarify some points, that they were almost exclusively focused on points Amelia had mentioned further marginalized Dumbledore. Reading aloud the letter that had been left on the doorstep with the baby, and then hearing Harry's description of how Dumbledore tried to get an 11-year-old facing his first trip away from home to renounce his father was shocking to those in the chamber. Bill Weasley also confirmed Dumbledore had attempted to blackmail him after arranging a reporter to cover Harry's private visit to the cemetery. Amelia then threw in that Dumbledore wanted the original rules of the Triwizard Tournament upheld, forcing Harry to face a dragon unarmed. That he then disregarded those same rules to inform Durmstrang's champion of what the task actually was just summed up the wizard in her opinion. Albus Dumbledore was a wizard who didn't think rules or laws applied to him. She wanted the chamber to let him know his opinion on that matter was wrong. As the questions dried up, Amos started the procedure of casting and counting the votes. Although a few gave Dumbledore the benefit of the doubt, the vast majority found him guilty. Amelia then stood to propose the sentence. If we were to stick to the prophecy as rigidly as Dumbledore, then his sentence would have to be death at Harry's hand. I have no intention of following that piece of fiction. Albus Dumbledore, though, has proven time and time again that he considers his great power and intelligence sufficient excuse to make decisions for other people, molding them into some greater good scenario only he can see. He's been doing this for so long that it's almost second nature to him now. That just isn't going to change. With that in mind, my recommendation is that Albus Dumbledore should spend the rest of his life in Azkaban. After handing 20 years to Umbridge, no one balked at passing that sentence to Dumbledore. Since this would be his last time with an audience, Albus decided to say his piece before being led away. You will need me again, when the new Dark Lord in your midst makes his real intentions known. He has corrupted all of Hogwarts, building his own private army so he can someday rule over us with a power base Voldemort could only dream about. When that day comes, you will once more need Albus Dumbledore to take care of the problems not heeding my advice caused. As Albus was staring straight at Harry, he stood to answer those charges. Dumbledore is going to be in Azkaban for a long, long time because I have no intentions of ruling anything. I have enough trouble trying to get my way in my own house. This raised a few chuckles before Harry continued. The Marauder clubs are breaking down house, blood, and even gender barriers at Hogwarts. There's something that's having such a positive influence on Hogwarts that they have become part of the curriculum. Dumbledore held final sway over who made prefect, along with head boy and girl for years. Was he building his own army? A few people knew their plans for the future, but Harry thought it was time to kill these accusations once and for all. My wife and I will actually be leaving Hogwarts next year. After our wedding, we intend to study to access a Muggle university. There, I will study history and politics for 4 or 5 years, while my wife prefers law. My only ambitions are to be the best husband and hopefully father I can be, and one day take over from our father as the nation's ambassador to the ministry. I have no wish to rule, just as I have no wish to see Albus Dumbledore ever again. I will make this promise in front of witnesses, though. Should we ever discover proof Dumbledore set my parents up to be murdered, Azkaban won't protect him from me. With that, a defeated Dumbledore was led away to begin his sentence. Harry already knew the powerful old wizard would be wearing magic-inhibiting cuffs for the rest of his life. One escape from Azkaban was enough for the Ministry. With their troubles all behind them, Hermione just wanted to go home. It was now time to start living the rest of their lives. Ooh, the discussions between the Pattles and the Longbottoms had gone along the same lines as those Harry and Hermione had heard from their parents. No children until they were at least a good few years older, and the family were still looking forward to the wedding next summer. That was why Padma was waking up in Neville's arms and not having to worry about sneaking back to her room. Something else had also changed. They couldn't seem to sleep past what Padma had previously considered to be the middle of the night. After getting up every morning to exercise, their body clocks were now used to rising at this time. One thing Padma could certainly get used to was cuddling into the handsome hunk her husband certainly was, which caused another change she couldn't yet quite believe. Their bodies were currently this shape due to all the physical exercise they did. Since Neville adored her body this shape, and they tended to be awake at this time anyway, Padma had suggested they continue exercising in the morning. They had found that, without the impending threat of battle, morning exercise was actually enjoyable. With Hermione hopefully able to fly again soon, they would be able to stop running too. She kissed her husband good morning before rising to get ready. Neville loved watching her squeeze into her lycra training gear almost as much as seeing her taking it off. Ooh, Draco awoke with Pansy draped over him, and then remembered what had happened yesterday to cause this wonderful phenomenon. On arriving home from Hogwarts, they found the manor empty of all their guests. With Voldemort finally defeated, they were able to leave the sanctuary of Malfoy Manor and return to their old lives, with both their mothers saying they wanted to raise Bruce at Parkinson Manor that left Draco and Pansy alone. After wandering around to enjoy the peace and quiet once more, Pansy had taken him by the hand and said it was time. They had spent a wonderful night together. The tap, tap, tap reminded Draco that something had woken him from sleep. He disentangled himself before opening the window to the post owl. Draco was reading the letter the owl just delivered when a sleepy voice interrupted his train of thought. Draco, unless that letter is more important than me, I want you back in bed. The parchment he held in his hands was from Gringotts, informing Draco his status had just changed. Due to them completing their bond, they were in the eyes of Gringotts married. That meant Draco now had access to the Malfoy vaults. A Draco from his mate saw him weighing up the parchment against a wading Pansy. The parchment was dropped on the floor as he climbed back into bed with his mate. Ooh, an excited Hermione could hardly wait for Harry to wake. He of course wasn't helping by pretending to be still sleeping. Her kisses soon dispelled that ruse. What has got you so pleased this morning? Oh, Harry, the healers said I could try flying today. It's also the first day of the holidays. We'll have people staying with us. Hermione, we always have people staying with us. Not since I became your wife. This really is our home now. Harry kissed the slight scar on her shoulder, left from getting hit with the killing curse. You are mine, and I am yours. I also don't want you pushing too hard today. We don't have to push that hard anymore. I won't, and this wasn't your fault. We swore we would share everything, and now we have one killing curse each. Even though I know I can be competitive, I have no wish to pull ahead of you on that score. She found Harry's arms tightening around her. Sorry, love, that's just not funny to anyone who watched you get hit. Even goblins wouldn't laugh at that. Yet Hemi cracks you up every time Jamie says it. Astrid is doing it now too. Harry, don't you dare, Harry. Harry's laughter resounded around Crow's Nest as the young couple got ready to face the day. Ren, thanks for reading. Ren, too next, weekend some time skips as I cherry-pick a few events. I really need to include the wedding. Still on course to finish with a small epilogue on the 5th. 105. Looking Forward. Harry Crow, Chapter 105. The entire family were early risers this morning, and it wasn't just Crow's Nest that was buzzing with excitement. The entire Glen was thrilled today. It was Jamie's first birthday. The girls had been so proud of the party they had thrown for their husbands on the island, and rightly so. Well over 100 guests had portkeyed onto the island on the afternoon of Neville's birthday, an island that was already packed to capacity with family and friends who were staying there. There were games organized on the beach, snacks and drinks available all day, and of course loads of swimming too. As the sun began to set, the more formal part of the event took place. It may be hard to describe loads of tables on a beach, each lit by lanterns hanging from a palm fronds parasol, as formal, but that was as formal as it got on the island. After dinner, two birthday cakes appeared as everyone joined in singing the traditional song. Once pieces of delicious cake had been enjoyed, it was dancing time. Doing so on a beach, under a tropical sky, actually gave Hogwarts a run for its money in terms of sheer beauty. At the stroke of midnight, a fabulous fireworks display had everyone enraptured. Most thought this was the end of the party until Hermione announced it was now Harry's birthday. This lent new impetus to the celebrations, and the party carried on for at least another 2 hours. Was porking back to Britain got something of a shock on realizing it wasn't yet 9 p.m. They had partied the night away, but still returned home at an hour their parents approved of. Padma and Hermione had basked in the praise of their friends and family for throwing the best party ever, only for Harry to steal their thunder some days later. It had all started off so innocently, too. After a summer where they received awards from the Irish, Bulgarian, and British ministries, it was time to meet the Queen. Having heard over and over how important family was to this group, Her Majesty took the unprecedented decision to present their awards at Balmoral Castle. This was her holiday home in the Highlands, and a lot of her family would be there too. The five were to be inducted into the most ancient and most noble Order of the Thistle, an order of chivalry associated with Scotland that was a gift from a grateful monarch. All five were to become Knights of the Thistle, with Neville and Harry now known as Sir, while Padma, Hermione, and Tonks became Ladies of the Thistle. There were some historic references that Robert the Bruce had introduced this award on the battlefield of Bannockburn. Therefore everyone felt this award was more appropriate than the most noble Order of the Garter. When Harry read the motto, Nemo me impune lacessit, no one provokes me with impunity, he was convinced it must have been written by a goblin. Although this location made the event a great deal more informal, it came at a price. Each recipient was only allowed to bring 2 people with them. Padma, Neville, and Hermione all chose their parents, with Tonks being accompanied by Remus and her dad. Harry, of course, wanted his father to be there, but was then left in a bit of a quandary. He eventually decided Parvati should really be present, but still intended to take Jamie in his arms. Although too young to have any idea what was happening, Harry still wanted his brother to be present on this special day. Harry was sure a grandmother wouldn't kick a toddler out of her home because there was one too many in their party. Turns out he was right. Her security were far more concerned about this group that had appeared out of nowhere, and 4 of them were wearing swords. Neville and the 3 witches had chosen to arrive in dress aura robes, as had Frank and Alice, all with an impressive array of awards on their chests. Harry was in his dress centurion tunic, now sporting his traditional Ravenclaw blue and bronze cape. The impressive medal collection, along with the sword at his hip, marked Harry as dangerous. The toddler on his other hip was probably the only reason those same security forces relaxed. The Queen performed the ceremony in an anteroom that had been set out specifically for this purpose. It was made even more special when Her Majesty asked each of the teens, in turn for their own sword, to carry out their induction into the order. Hermione was beaming, as the Queen used the sword that now had Crow engraved on its blade to dub her a Lady of the Thistle. Her mum and dad were sharing tissues as they looked on. They were all then invited to an informal family tea, and that's where the trouble started. It began innocuously enough, Her Majesty inquiring if they could perhaps see a little magic. The few trusted servants in attendance almost fainted where they stood, with good reason. Priceless pieces of silverware were now fluffy white rabbits that were hopping about the table. Jamie was sitting on his mother's knee, clapping at the display, but the toddler already knew exactly what he wanted. Still clapping his hands, Jamie began to bounce and chant, "Fly, fly, fly." Harry stood and bowed to the Queen. "Excuse me, ma'am, I think you'll like this." With barely a jump, Swift was then flying around the massive room, performing stunning aerobatics as he weaved his way in and out the chandeliers at speed. Jamie was laughing and clapping before turning his attention to his sister. "Hemi fly, Hemi fly." While those who hadn't seen this before currently had their jaws hitting the table, Padma, Hermione, and Neville joined Harry in the air. Jamie was giggling with glee, especially when Swift would fly really close to him. The four birds became teens again, bowed, curtsied before resuming their seats at a stunned table. That was extraordinary. Can all witches and wizards do that? It was Remus who answered the Queen's question. No, ma'am, very few actually. My wife, though, has a magical ability that is even rarer. While kicking Remus under the table, Tonks changed her hair color a few times before morphing into passable impersonations of Hermione and then Padma. The looks of envy coming from the other side of the table were explained by Her Majesty. That is indeed a rare talent, one all of us, I'm sure, wished we possessed. It would be nice to occasionally go out without everyone recognizing us, and then photographing our every move. That drew a chuckle of understanding from Harry. We know exactly how that feels, ma'am. We are renowned inside Gringotts and the magical community. And that's when trouble struck as Harry had an idea. Ma'am, I hope I'm not being too presumptuous here, but we are having a party for Jamie's birthday in Kingassy. There will be a roller coaster and flying carpets for the older kids, while I'm sure our father could convince Gringotts to put on a dragon display if you wish to visit. Dan also has a clay pigeon shooting range set up for any adults or teens who would like to try it. It was only then that Harry noticed every pair of eyes in the room were focused on him. Hermione's were almost burning right through her husband. A lot of those pairs of eyes then switched to the Queen. Although the monarch, she was also a grandmother, and having all her grandchildren staring at her with looks of wonder and longing in their eyes would have been too much for anyone. I don't think we have a protocol for something like this. I assume it will be safe for them. Bartchoke answered that one. The rest of the family were still in shock. It was hard to tell who was worse, Hermione or her mother. Ma'am, you will all be perfectly safe, and if I may say, thoroughly entertained. Our children chose to live their lives with a unique blend of our three cultures. Kingassy has played host to people from all of those cultures. Each have felt at home there. We can easily arrange to have some friends around their own age show your grandchildren over the glen, leaving the adults free to pursue whatever takes their fancy. Kingassy is so safe. Not even these Scottish midges can get through its defenses. Sir, while I would love to see a dragon banning midges from an entire glen impresses me more. No one knew what to do when the Queen cracked a joke, but members of her own family chuckling along told them it was all right to do the same. Bartchoke informed her that the leader of their nation and the Minister of Magic would be present. Both would have their wives with them and just be there to enjoy themselves. This event was certainly classed as a social occasion, not a state one. The Queen, agreeing to attend, saw some very excited grandchildren, and Hermione's pallor matching that of the Lady Ravenclaw. They had hardly set foot back in Crow's Nest when Bartchoke sprang into action. I'll get my department onto this at once. Bill, Jenny, Penny, and Percy can accompany our special visitors around the glen. Harry, you contact the Potter Scholars. They can help look after the young princes and princesses. I'll also contact the director, while Arthur can inform the ministry. There's no protocol for this, so we're making it up as we go along. We're looking at another day where history is being made in Kingassy. Seeing the shocked appearance of the returning family, it was Sirius that asked the question the rest of them wanted to know the answer to. What in the name of Merlin happened? My husband happened. Luna, remember you wanted to meet the Queen. You're going to get your wish. My husband here invited the entire bloody royal family to our brother's first birthday party in less than a week. Taking a deep breath, she then turned to her now nervous husband and just about kissed his socks off. Part of me wants to strangle you for dropping me right in it again. Another part wants to drag you away and properly reward you for bringing our three cultures closer again. Hermione then wiped the smile of her husband's face. Unfortunately, we now have to get our home ready for this royal visit. We're going to be working our arses off. As Hermione started issuing tasks to her volunteers, Dan couldn't quite hide his groan. He did only whisper to Emma, though. I could quite happily have done without ever hearing that in my life. Neither had long to fret on it, though, as their daughter had tasks for them too. Only Bartchoke escaped. He needed to organize the nation's response to this and inform Arthur. Elves, goblins, witches, wizards, and muggles had all worked very hard to have the entire glen sparkling like a new pin and have an itinerary in place that Her Majesty had readily agreed to. Now all they had to do was pull it off. The Creevies, McDonalds, and Abercrombies were pulling double duties today. Not only were they offering advice on their royal visitors, they were introducing the family of this year's Muggle-born Potter scholar to their new world. While young Mark Evans seemed to take everything in his stride, his parents just kept looking around them. This had the senior Creevy chuckling at their obvious discomfort while trying to allay their fears. "We all know exactly how you feel. I'm a milkman who has two wizards and a witch for children. After accepting that, little things like meeting the Queen today don't seem such a big deal. Both our sons love Hogwarts, and our Maggie just can't wait to go." Mary MacDonald was more than ready to take another young couple under her wing. "Our Natalie adores Hogwarts too. Colin and Luna looked after her during her first year there. They still do now. We've actually met the leaders from the magical and goblin societies before, but this is the first time the Queen has visited. As you can imagine, it's a big day for everyone around here. Harry and Hermione will have more time to talk to you later once they get this visit over with." Harry and Hermione were currently standing waiting on the portkey, delivering their special guests. Bill, Jenny, Percy, Penny, and Sapphire had gone to Balmoral to bring them here. Sapphire had argued she needed to be involved, giving the goblins a presence on the visiting party. Astrid had started calling her grandfather Papa. Jamie, then doing the same for Bartchoke, brought a tear to the goblin's eye. This meant that Jamie's papa had to be at his birthday celebrations, leaving Sapphire as the obvious candidate to accompany the Queen and her family. As there was no protocol for this, when Harry introduced Her Majesty to the director, she held out her hand to be shaken. Hermione instantly thought that historic event made all the worrying and work worthwhile. After shaking Ragnar and Rainer's hands, Her Majesty then did the same for Cornelius and his wife, before moving on to greet the rest of the guests in the house. Using his Hogwarts connections, Harry had managed to borrow a horseless carriages to transport the Queen and Prince Philip around the glen. The elves and goblins then did a fair amount of work on this carriage, leaving it glimmering with gold trim and certainly now fit for a queen. Hagrid provided the Thestrals, getting to spend some time with a dragon being more than enough payment for him. The younger members were going to be sightseeing by flying carpet. No one had thought it suitable to ask the Queen to sit on a rug. Percy and Penny led the Potter scholars in looking after the young princes and princesses. They would fly around the glen a few times before rejoining their grandparents at their visit to the goblin settlement. The Queen was chatting with Jenny, using her own experience of placing her son in a Highland boarding school to understand how the young mother felt allowing her child to enter an environment she knew so little about. They at least had some inside knowledge, with Charles' father attending Gordonstown at the same age. Prince Philip appeared really interested that Sapphire was already apprenticed, and then posed a question none of the three could answer. As Sapphire excitedly spoke of Harry and Hermione eventually going to university, he asked why she didn't join them there. Bill sat back and experienced what was nothing short of a master class in diplomatic skills. This couple had been doing this for so long, it was now second nature to them. Both Sapphire and Jenny were made to feel extremely comfortable as they chatted, and it was easy to see there was genuine interest in their answers. Bill had initially apologized for the three of them being delegated to accompany the royal visit, knowing this was not the usual protocol. The Queen had shot him down at once, saying she understood Goblin protocol placed someone's birthday as the most important event of the year. This dictated that the family really needed to be at the scheduled birthday party, not showing guests around their glen. Hearing the noise and laughter being generated from what was originally the kiddie zone put smiles on all their faces, as did watching her delighted grandchildren wave like crazy as they flew past on a couple of magic carpets. Jamie was having a grand time. Their play park was full of children, and he was the center of attention. Being so young, though, all the excitement and activity soon began to take its toll. It was a tired little tyke who was laid down in the area they had set up as a little nursery for a nap. The birthday boy was soon joined by Astrid, Bruce, and a couple of goblin toddlers. There were silencing charms over that area so the noise wouldn't disturb their sleep, with Darby monitoring the situation closely. The Granger family elf was already devoted to the little master. Such were the changes being made in their society that pureblood Muggle-born, Vila, and Goblin toddlers, all taking a nap together, wasn't even commented on, apart from how cute they looked. Jamie was still napping when the Queen rejoined his birthday party, though the older children, including her grandchildren, would soon be leaving to ride on the roller coaster and visit the dragon exhibit. The amount of children having fun couldn't fail to put a smile on any parent's face. The guests of honor were then led to a table where tea, sandwiches, and cakes just appeared. This was service that even exceeded what they were used to. As she sat sipping her favorite tea, the Queen realized just how wrong her government were to withdraw their aid from this young man. Every single person she had met today, wizard, goblin, or mundane, all had genuine affection and admiration for this couple. Seeing that exhibit, where they fought the giant snake, was terrifying. The young red-haired man describing what had happened that day was almost as harrowing as watching that memory of their battle at Bannockburn. The British monarch was now delighted to have presented these five with the awards they so thoroughly deserved, and after speaking with some of the goblins who now lived and worked here, fully supported what was happening in Kingussie. Being queen, she couldn't actually say so. That didn't mean her prime minister wouldn't soon be doing that job for her. She intended to have a chat about this with her prime minister at their next scheduled meeting. Watching her grandchildren troop off with playmates their own age to have a good time is exactly what she wanted for them. Even although this situation could never be considered normal, it was still a rare occasion where she could relax and witness that. Her Majesty was also sure Philip had planted a seed in Sapphire's mind, a seed that she intended to see her government offering any assistance needed to ensure it germinated. British universities were full of students from all over the world. A goblin should be able to fit in without too much difficulty. Ooh-oh, the following year, Barchoke found himself back in the Hall of Heroes, something he'd been doing more and more. He always stood in the same place, right in front of the tableau that featured his family, most of whom were in tears the first time they saw it. He may be slightly biased, but Barchoke thought it was a work of art, nothing short of a masterpiece of goblin craft and storytelling. It of course featured the Battle of Bannockburn and all the main players that day. Rookwood was already down, and unfortunately so too was Neville, though clearly only temporarily. All knew the story of how he had ended up there, however, throwing himself in front of the torture curse intended for his mate. Padma was poised to take off Lestrange's arm with her long-bottom blade. The green glowing curse at the end of the mad bitch's wand was never going to be cast. Harry and Hermione were both fighting Voldemort, and his wand too glowed green at the tip as he prepared to unleash that horrible curse on Hermione. The master craftsgoblins who created this tableau clearly understood the nation would never accept a work where Hermione was lying on the ground. Irrational as it might seem, Barchoke himself knew he wouldn't be nearly as fond of the scene if that was the case. Seeing his daughter lying there in real life was one of the worst moments of his life. He had no wish to be reminded of it ever again. At its unveiling, the family had stood in stunned silence while they attempted to take it all in. Muggles, goblins, Vila, a werewolf, house elves, witches and wizards were all here, every single one of them giving their all to ensure the five heroes survived. It was Sirius who noticed them first, his gasp of surprise being only a short step away from a sob. There, amongst the Aurors who were pouring their magic into those wards, were James and Lily Potter, both doing the same. It was left to Dan to try and put into words what their family was feeling. Harry, we believe our loved ones never really leave us. I think it's fitting that your mum and dad are up there, still giving everything they have to keep their son safe. Hermione certainly wasn't the only person with tears in her eyes, but her wide smile to her father let Dan know he'd gotten that just right. The tableau was a massive hit with the nation, but Barchoke liked to come at quieter times. It allowed him to speak with two old friends. James, Lily, it's finally time. They've left Hogwarts and are now ready to start on the next phase of their lives. But first we have a wedding to celebrate. And what a wedding! There will be 3 ministers of magic there, and of course the director and his mate. You'll be delighted to know, Lily, that there will even be representatives from your royal family in Kingussie too. That had Barchoke thinking back to what he had once hoped tomorrow could be, only for every single one of those hopes to be exceeded by a massive margin. I hope it's like Dan says. You're both with Harry tomorrow to see our wonderful children get married for yourself. You'll also see the beautiful witch your godson is marrying too. Frank, Alice, and Augusta adore Padma nearly as much as Neville does. Our children are entering a period where Dan and Emma will have a bigger influence on their lives as they study to attend university. That's as it should be. Sirius and I have steered them through Hogwarts. This is now the Granger's area of expertise. I thought I would find you here, old friend. Shouldn't you be in Kingassy by now? I would hate for any of your family to be worried over you. Tomorrow is a big day. I have a little while yet before I'm expected, Director. Were you looking for me for a particular reason? I was wondering if your assistant ambassador had reached a decision yet about his future. There have been a number of inquiries about his availability. He has impressed at everything he has done in all his years with us, none more so, though, than in his time with you. This put a smile on Barchoke's face. He has finally asked Jenny to marry him, and she said yes. I think that will rule him out of going back to being a curse breaker. His days of raiding tombs in the remotest corners of the world are over. He also knows I've got my eye on Jenny to come and work for us after she gets her law degree. Bill might just decide to stay where he is. Harry has 2 years of study to get into university, then at least another 4 years after that before he can take up his position. I think Bill will be staying where he is for at least another couple of years. That news had the director laughing. With his brother and sister-in-law in your department too, you really are making it a family affair. Looking at the tableau, Ragnar grew serious once more. Building that family has stood Gringotts in good stead, so you just keep on doing what you're doing. In a few years you might even see that family grow. Grandchildren are such a blessing. Both want to finish university first, and Padma starts her apprenticeship in September. I'll be ready to retire by the time any grandchildren come along. Reinher and I are looking forward to tomorrow. We'll see you all then. As Ragnar left, Barchoke thought it was time for him to do the same. He'd lived all his life in Gringotts, but now thought of Kingassy as home. Then again, that's where his family lived. One of the hardest decisions for any bride is the dress. With 2 brides and such a mixture of cultures, Padma and Hermione's decision was harder than most. Yes, it was a Muggle ceremony, but they were back to sending out the right signals again. Hermione didn't want a traditional Muggle dress, just as Padma shied away from a sari. Their Aura dress robes were out too for the same reason. They almost settled for their Marauder training robes. That club was such a big part of their life. When Hermione hit on an idea. I think I fell in love with Harry from the moment I laid eyes on him. You saw how he was dressed. It would be hard not to. What if we had wedding dresses made from the same period? Oh, and the guys could all be tailored like Harry was too. I like that. When the goblin tailors had shown them some designs and materials, both girls knew this was exactly what they wanted. While their dresses might still touch the ground, there was no wide skirt, train, or veil. The white silk flowed around their bodies like petals of a flower that was about to bloom. Each bodice was a mixture of silk and lace, which also enhanced bodies that still exercised every day, being sleeveless and practically backless too. Both had beautiful belts around their waist, and while inlaid with gold and jewels, they were not purely for decoration. Neither Padma or Hermione would be without those swords that had Longbottom and Crow engraved on them. Padma was surprised and delighted that her parents decided to forego their traditional form of dress to adopt the same Pride and Prejudice theme as the rest of the family. She thought her father was very handsome as he escorted her down the aisle, dressed as an Indian version of Mr. Darcy. Parvati, Luna, and Sapphire walked behind them, wearing white dresses that only differed from both brides in that they had a much simpler bodice, and of course no belt and swords. Hermione may have written the invitations, but that didn't mean she wasn't still surprised at the number of people here. Knowing there would be over 400 guests, and then seeing them all was 2 different things. Harry seemed such a long way away, as the music had them walking toward both grooms. As her dad led her to Harry and Reverend Richards, her smile got wider as she thought they were keeping him busy. Since he'd married the Lupins, Tonks and Remus had asked Robert to christen their son. Teddy, Hermione, and Harry had stood as his godparents at yesterday's ceremony, held in Kingassy, of course. With Henrika heavily pregnant too, Hermione knew she would be drawing godmother duties again soon. Both fathers soon passed their daughters on to their grooms before sitting down beside their tearful wives. Reverend Richards then got the show on the road. It was time to marry these two couples. Hermione had held herself together well, right up until Harry slipped that ring on her finger. She had moved the Potter matriarch ring to her right hand, leaving her finger ready to accept this final band of gold. It was what this represented that finally released Hermione's tears, though they were certainly tears of joy. Here was a goblin-crafted work of art, made right here in Kingassy. It not only symbolized Harry's love for her, but how far their societies had come. As Harry uttered, with this ring, I thee wed Hermione was about to become Mrs. Crow, and the entire country supported them in this. When the Reverend finally said, "You may now kiss your bride," Hermione put her very soul into their first kiss as a couple who were now husband and wife in all three of the societies they lived in. The cheering as both couples kissed was tumultuous. Standing in the receiving line, as all their guests congratulated them seemed to take hours, they even managed to smile as Ron and Lavender wished them well. Ron had calmed down a lot over the last year, and inviting the rest of the Weasleys without him wasn't really an option. Neither was inviting him without his girlfriend, hence Lavender got to set foot in Kingassy again, just for today though. Blaise and Roger had enjoyed winding Colin up that he, as the youngest, could give the best man speech. When the time came, it was Roger who stood to do the honors. Learning about goblins saw Roger get straight down to business, something he thought his four friends would appreciate. Meeting Harry Crow changed my life. How many here can also say that? Hermione, Neville, and Padma had their hands straight up in the air. This generated some laughter before every single person then raised their hand too. This drew a smile from Roger. That's just about what I expected. He was halted for a moment as elves, who had just served them a wonderful meal, began appearing with their hands raised too. And that will please these four even more. This led to applause that soon spread right around the tables. The area in front of the Swiss chalet had been expanded so they could all eat dinner there, while the section in front of Crow's Nest that had earlier held the wedding ceremony was now being set up as the dance floor for later. I had a front row seat as these four became inseparable from their first week at Hogwarts, Harry taking down a troll in those first few days to save these two brides, and one of their bridesmaids is something Blaise specifically wanted me to thank you for. This again generated laughter as everyone knew that story. It had now passed into folklore. Hermione had already made her mind up she was with Harry before the feast was served at Hogwarts. She hadn't been in the castle an hour before Hermione jumped from the Ravenclaw table to be at Harry's side. If Dumbledore was sending Harry home, then Hermione was going too. In a matter of days, Padma and then Neville had joined them. The Fab Four were born. Roger was quite pleased that got a few laughs, until he noticed it was only those with Muggle connections that were laughing. He'd need to ask Hermione about that later. This might be two couples, but they were incredibly close right from the start. Fred, George, Cedric, and I were lucky enough to take part in their extra training. We spent the next few years getting our arses kicked on a weekly basis. Even adding Victor Crumb and my fiancée, Fleur, didn't help. It at least took them longer to defeat the six of us. This generated some genuine laughter, as everyone knew Roger hated getting beat at anything. When the story eventually came out that both couples were bonded, it wasn't exactly a big surprise. We all could see how close they were, how hard they trained, yet how normal they wanted to be. It's a testament to them that seeing these four in the Prophet and reading about the latest thing they had achieved just became normal to us. This is who our friends are. He then expanded on that idea. I've spent 5 years in Hogwarts with them, gone on holiday alongside them, visited that wonderful island, and of course spent time with all four here. I thought the Baron's Fair was one of the greatest things ever to happen in this country, but today tops that. Roger now directed his comments to both couples. I've twice watched my four friends go off to war and done the best I could on both of those occasions. The last time was hopefully the war to end all wars. We could do with a good few peaceful generations. You four played a massive part in that. You have all our thanks for that. I think it's now time to raise our glasses and toast four best friends who today became two of the nicest married couples I know. I give you the brides and grooms. Harry found himself on the dance floor for the rest of the night. After his first dance with Hermione, he and Neville swapped brides as he then danced with Padma. 3 bridesmaids followed, then 3 mothers, Tonks, and now a very pregnant Henrika. He had a promise to keep to reign her next too. This is very inconsiderate of you, Harry, arranging your honeymoon when I'm due to give birth. Who's going to carry me into St. Mungo's while you're lying on a beach with Hermione? I think you're forgetting. Our wedding date was set well before you went and got pregnant. It's also Mooney's turn to be godfather. He'll carry you if Sirius can't manage it. This had both of them laughing before Henrika came back at him. There is still quite a queue of ladies waiting to dance with the groom, one of the disadvantages of having a large family. It's a price I'm happy to pay, Henrika. Besides, I've got Hermione all to myself for the next 2 weeks. The elves will let us know when the happy event happens. I think it will be sooner than that. Oh, Harry, I certainly hope so. Between the Delackers, Moa and Henrika, there were 5 Vila in Kingussie waiting on a dance with the grooms. Both, though, only had eyes for the beautiful witches they just married. Hogwarts was busy, but just didn't feel the same without the 4 friends being there. That all changed when the students walked into dinner and found a quartet of visitors sitting at the Ravenclaw table. After all the squeals of greeting, they finally got some answers. It's Crow's Marauders tonight. The club's run up until the end of 5th year. Who else is going to take you lot? Luna wasn't the only one who wanted confirmation, but she was the only one who asked. Do you mean the club is still going to run this year, Harry? Yes, Luna. We're going to be here every week, and for the Christmas parties too. This was very good news, but Harry had more to say. I'm Hogwarts champion, now one of the 3 responsible for the Potter scholarships, and then there's also the Marauders program to consider. I may no longer be a student here, but I intend to be returning to the castle for many years to come. This was something that pleased everybody, and not just Crow's Marauders. Augusta then approached with a pair of scrolls. Since you dropped in, I now won't have to owl these. They are invitations to the Merlin Ball. I hope you can make it. Neville tried not to laugh. His Gran was well aware they would be arriving in Hogwarts tonight. Gran, you know we wouldn't miss it. Harry quickly agreed with Neville, before adding even more. The Lady Helena is opening the room for the Marauder clubs. She will also open the room for you if it's needed for a ball or something special. I've also arranged for the Goblin Tailors to visit for our new first years the weekend before the Merlin Ball. It was the happiest dinner since returning to Hogwarts for the students. These 4 may no longer be in the castle every day, but it was now clear they hadn't really left Hogwarts for good. 6 years later. The couple ran alongside the docks, watching the ships being loaded with supplies for the oil rigs. Turning right saw them heading on to the promenade as they raced along Aberdeen's seafront. I can't believe this is our last day here. The time just seems to fly past. Our last exam is today. This had his wife firing right back at him. You weren't saying that back in November, when the North Sea was coming right over that wall. You were turning the air nearly as blue as we were. I told you we should just have stayed in bed that morning. We were soaked and half frozen to death. Hermione, once you start staying in bed, it just becomes harder to get out that same bed the following morning. When it's below 0 and blowing a gale, you better believe it's hard to get out of bed, especially when my toasty hot husband is lying beside me. As they reached the River Darn, they turned left to cut inland before turning again to head back to their flat, just 100 yards or so from Aberdeen University. Whose turn is it to make breakfast this morning? I'll get it, love. It's actually Sapphire's, but she's stressing out over this exam. We both know she'll pass it easily, but she wants that top mark. As the first actual goblin to attend university, Sapphire knows the eyes of the nation will be upon her. She's desperate for the words first class to be on her honors degree. She certainly worked hard enough for it. Those slight glamours certainly helped, so did going to every class with her brother. It will be great to get back to Kingussie and see our own brother. Harry, it's not even a fortnight since we were home for the weekend. In the last 4 years, we could probably count on the one hand the number of times we went longer than a fortnight without spending a weekend at home. No, but I still miss it. You were right that day when you first walked in. Kingussie is home. Crow's Nest is where we live, and I miss it when we're not there. Well, we were supposed to go out and celebrate after our last exam. You fancy skipping and heading straight home. This got a smile from Harry. That sounds great, and Sapphire will certainly vote for that. Tony is building up his courage to ask her out on a date again. This is our last day, and there's a hint of desperation about him now. I thought that was because you were practically growling at him. He likes Sapphire, and she likes him, just not like that. She couldn't help but chuckle as Harry almost stumbled at her teasing. Oh, so not funny, Mrs. Crow. All these years, and we still need to work on that sense of humor. This just had her laughing more as they put a sprint on toward the flat they shared with Sapphire. Today would be their last day in Aberdeen, just returning to collect their degrees. It was almost time to start the next phase of their lives. At least they wouldn't have to worry about getting a job. Harry and Sapphire were already set, and Hermione had more offers than she knew what to do with. They would discuss that over the summer. It was time for the Crows to fly home. And thanks for reading. And too, this chapter fought me more than the 100 plus that preceded it. Only a short epilogue to go now and we're done, hopefully by the end of the weekend. 106. Epilogue. Harry Crow, ANI, always said I would finish this story, and 2 years later here we are. A great big thank you to everyone who came on this journey with me. I hope you like the final destination we reach here. Chapter 106, Platform 9, and 3/4 was buzzing with the sounds of friends greeting friends they hadn't seen since before the summer holidays, and families saying goodbye to their children. The family near the far end of the platform probably counted as the largest there, though absolutely no doubt existed that they were by far and away the strangest. That a pair of muggles stood beside goblin parents would see them win that contest hands down, and that was before the rest of the company were taken into consideration. This was Jamie, Astrid, Bruce, and Zacklaw's time to head for Hogwarts. All were 11 years old. Jamie and Zack had been best friends since they were toddlers growing up together in Kingassy. With Astrid and Bruce being frequent visitors over the years, all four were really close. This was what saw Zack heading to Hogwarts, the first goblin to attend since Harry Crow. As the precedent had already been set, Zack also had a specially manufactured knife, similar to the assistant ambassador's. What convinced Zacklaw's parents to allow this, though, was the silver pin on his robes. It was a copy of the Potter family crest, and marked their son as a Potter scholar. That their son would have the support this offered inside Hogwarts, his three friends would also be there with him, and the assistant ambassador visited the castle practically on a weekly basis were the main reasons they were allowing him on this train. The other sets of parents were on the platform too, as were the proud grandparents Moa, Lucas, and Barchoke. The Lupins and the younger Longbottoms completed the family lineup, for the moment. Neville was now also a proud parent, cradling their 4-month-old daughter in his arms. She looked like a tiny version of Padma, only her skin being a light coffee color, and Neville thought she was the most beautiful girl on the planet, next to her mother, of course. Their wonderful daughter was named after Neville's godmother, and to honor their best friends, and of course her godparents. Lily Longbottom, however, had already captured her father's heart and soul. They're still not here. It's not like them to be late. Do you think something has happened? Emma knew she and Dan were far more prepared for Jamie getting on this train than they were for his big sister's journey. In all honesty, though, that wouldn't exactly be difficult. She tried to ease her son's fears. There's no way they would miss you lot heading for Hogwarts. If anything had happened, we would already have heard. Their attention was then occupied by a beautiful witch with long black hair rushing up to the group, Barchoke receiving the first hug. Danielle then turned her attention to the 4 new first years. You all set for a trip to Scotland. Miss Dugan really was a beautiful witch, her marauder trainer robes emphasizing the fact she would come of age in January. She didn't need to be wearing her Potter Scholar badge to know there was going to be a massive party planned for then. Danielle had been a frequent visitor to Kingassy since she was 5 and certainly considered part of the extended family. Padma was smiling at Bruce's usual reaction to Danielle, his crush reminding her of another young first year. That boy, though, had an ever-present camera. Colin and Luna had parted as friends during their 6th year, Ginny Weasley quickly moving in and snapping him up. They were now married, and Luna was happy for them. She just preferred the life she now led as Harry and Hermione's private secretary. With both being such high-profile individuals, Luna looked after their diaries and was the only way to get near the Crows. Luna was very protective of them, and with Sapphire performing the same function on the goblin side of the divide, all 4 were happy and content with the way their lives were unfolding. Padma also couldn't help but smile at how Astrid tried to direct attention away from her friends blushing. These four were as close as another quartet that had been formed in Hogwarts. I don't see why I have to take the train to Hogwarts. I've been living there most of my life. Why can't I just portkey with you guys? That's what I usually do. This seems such a waste of time. The adults could see what Astrid was up to, but Sirius answered his daughter anyway. I met your Uncle Remus on the train to Hogwarts, and your favorite story has always been how Harry met Hermione on this very same train. It's an important part of growing up. You can meet people today who will be your best friends for the rest of your life. He was interrupted by his father-in-law. As the tallest, it was Lucas who spotted them first. I think they're coming. It's hard to see, but I don't know of anyone else who could cause that kind of reaction amongst a crowd. Lucas was of course right. Every head on the platform was now turned to see what was causing all the excitement. To the Hogwarts students, this was just a couple they knew well from their frequent visits to the castle. It was the parents who were in total awe of them. Luna and Sapphire were practically having to push a path through the crowd for the couple, Harry refusing to budge from a very heavily pregnant Hermione's side. Neville handed Lily to her mother as he and Tonks lent a hand. The two Auras soon had a path clear for them to reach their family. It was a tired Hermione who hugged her brother. I didn't think you were going to make it, sis. I was sure the healers were going to keep you in. You are about the size of a house, you know. She lovingly ruffled his hair. Since I'm the one carrying this house about with me, then you better believe I know what size I am. What I can't believe is that I'm going to be in Hogwarts when I become an uncle. You will send me some pictures. At that, Darby popped beside them. Darby will let little Master know as soon as he becomes an uncle. Darby will also bring pictures when Mistress Emma takes them. This seemed to ease Jamie's doubts. Thanks, Darby. You're the best. Hermione, though, had more to add. You know, we visit the castle a lot. We're going to be bringing the baby with us. The Lady Helena asked especially, and you know Harry's not going to disappoint her. After greeting the four heading off to Hogwarts, Harry noticed the other two looking unhappy in the background, not something he was ever going to allow. Teddy, Luke, why so sad? His godson was first to answer. Uncle Sirius says you meet your best friends on this train. Luke and me don't go until next year. Does that mean they won't be our best friends anymore? He wanted to laugh, but could see this was really troubling them. Harry gently explained the situation to both boys. Teddy, you live in the castle. You'll be seeing them every day for the next 7 years. Luke, you live there too, and Astrid is your sister. My goddaughter is hardly likely to forget about the bane of her life. This drew a smile from both boys. All knew how close the black children were. I think you guys could do with a few more girls in the group anyway. Astrid has her hands full trying to keep the 5 of you in line. All clearly heard the admiration in Luke's voice. It was bordering on awe. But she has Danielle to help, and she is amazing. This generated quite a few chuckles and earned the now red-faced Luke a kiss on the cheek from the amazing witch in question. His mother, though, was left shaking her head. Only 10, but already charming witches. He's certainly his father's son. That comment from Henrika just seemed to please both black males, generating more chuckles within the family group. The warning whistle saw final hugs being exchanged as Danielle got the 4 loaded on to the train. She may be a Potter scholar, but they were family, and she knew how well that same family had looked out for her over the years. Danielle intended to ensure these 4 settled in well to Hogwarts. She could do no less. They had barely stepped on the train when Luna whirled on Hermione. Okay, you've seen them off. Now can we go? This was so out of character for Luna that the entire family was now focused on this pair. In a minute, Luna. I just want to wave as the train leaves. This led to a harumph from Luna. I think I'll go and tell the driver to get his finger out. Perhaps then you'll actually listen to sense. The family now couldn't fail to notice that Harry was practically supporting Hermione, and Emma shifted straight into worry mode. Is there something wrong? Something you're not telling us about? Luna tried for sarcasm, but it just came out as pleading. Apart from the fact she's in labor, everything's fine. She refused to stay in the medical facility. Hermione Crow decided she knew better than the healers and came here. Sapphire was also clearly worried about the situation. Harry, please. Hermione needs to get to the medical facility. Talk to her. Harry gazed into his wife's beautiful brown eyes. I can't believe you're doing this to me. Our child is going to be heading to Hogwarts on their birthday. That is simply unacceptable, Mrs. Crow. My husband has some good connections at Hogwarts. I'm sure he'll think of something. I married a very smart goblin, and they are sneaky little devils. A baby is coming, love, and they are coming soon. This left Sapphire shaking her head in frustration. You two are as bad as each other. I don't know how Luna and I put up with you. Harry then easily scooped his wife into his arms as Hermione rested her head on his shoulder. Exactly 14 years ago in this very place, I helped a young girl onto the train, best decision I ever made. A loving kiss followed as the train whistle signaled it was departing. Hey, Harry, how come I didn't get a kiss like that? Remember when I was in your arms, in labor with Astrid? Probably because your husband was standing right next to you. I happen to know this beautiful lady's spouse, and he positively encourages me to kiss her as much as I want. Time to go now, love. Hermione could only nod as the contraction hit. Emma, Dan, Barchoke, and Luna all grabbed on as Harry activated his emergency portkey. Sapphire let out a sigh of relief as she watched them disappear. Those two were too headstrong for their own good. It certainly made her and Luna's jobs interesting, though. Sapphire was still on duty here as she approached the goblin parents. Zaclo really will be fine. You know, I've stayed in Hogwarts many times before. As well as Sirius, Henrika, and Remus, he will also know his new potions professor well, too. This had Padma chuckling. I thought goblins were good at keeping secrets. The train has left, so they won't find out until they see you sitting there at the feast. Teddy and Luke now know a secret that those four don't, but they won't say anything. A wink from Sapphire really cheered both boys up. They were sons of marauders, and now in on the prank on their best friends. Sapphire was going to use her portkey to take Zach's parents home to Kingassy before heading back to Gringotts. She didn't want to miss the prank Harry and Hermione had planned for the family. Only she and Luna knew the secret, which was why they had been so worried, but the news would be all over the country by tomorrow. Barchoke had dropped some heavy hints that he was looking forward to having grandchildren and retiring. Sapphire could be the assistant ambassador sooner than anyone, though. As the Blacks, Lupins, and Longbottoms left for Hogwarts, Sapphire was heading to where she now considered home, Kingassy. Ooh, the concentration on Albus' face was total. This really was tricky without the proper tools. Since his present accommodation didn't allow any tools whatsoever, not even for eating, Albus was just having to do the best he could. After arriving in Azkaban, Albus discovered that Harry had arranged for the Daily Prophet to be delivered to his cell. The boy obviously thought this would torture Albus, reading about how easily the crows were subverting his country, but they hadn't reckoned on his brilliance. Albus had taken the method of his supposed torture and turned it into his tool for bringing down the Crow dynasty and pushing the goblins back underground where they belonged. It was all here, right in front of him, 24 hours a day. Daily Prophet articles relating to Harry Crow, his wife, along with their supposed family and friends. Albus would carefully tear them out of the Prophet and stick them onto his cell wall. Through years of experimentation, he discovered that licking the back of the article would then see it stay on the walls best. After that, there was no stopping him. Those articles on Hermione opening up her own law offices in Hogsmeade should have set alarm bells ringing in the magical community. They didn't, and the goblins got away with another ruse. It wasn't long before Hermione and the Lovegood girl were lobbying to have wizarding laws changed. It was now a crime to mistreat a house elf. Even telling them to punish themselves counted as mistreatment and could see your servant legally taken away. Albus looked up at those particular fading articles and was left shaking his head. His eyes then traveled around his walls, the articles speaking to him as the portraits in his office once did. One wall was exclusively for their friends and acquaintances. Just being Crow's friend was enough to get your name in the paper and bring you to Albus' attention. They were all here, the Longbottom boy breezing through Aura training and already a senior Aura, while his wife was a potions mistress. Their daughter being born was actually front page news. The Weasleys were a family who seriously disappointed Albus. Their eldest marrying a Muggle, while their only daughter took a Muggle born as a husband, was really shocking. Nearly as shocking as two of their sons working for Gringotts, while the twins now owned a joke shop. With the future head of the family married to a Muggle, the Weasleys would be shunned in their own society, even with Voldemort gone. Marley would be distraught, but Albus had no sympathy for any of them. Neither Arthur, Marley nor William would listen to him. Now the entire family were reaping what they sowed. Draco Malfoy was proving his Slytherin ancestry by brilliantly aligning himself with Crow. His two sons would certainly benefit from their father's manipulations, especially considering how both their grandfathers died. Malfoy was certainly someone Albus considered could be brought around to his side when he got out of here. The Davis boy was lost to him. Marrying that Vila and then moving to France took him out of Albus' sphere of influence. Diggory's son bringing that Chinese girl into their family would maybe shut his father's boasting up. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Albus had agonized before finally placing Severus up here. This one was like a dagger through his heart. His former comrade's actions at the third task that day cemented Severus was lost to Albus forever. Severus had made what he obviously considered a better deal with the goblins. It really was hard for Albus to refute that Severus was right, since his picture kept appearing in the Prophet with a pretty witch on his arm. Albus' concentration and efforts finally paid off as the article on the goblin student attending Hogwarts was carefully torn out today's Prophet with nice, straight edges. On any other day, Albus would be excited about this. Surely having real goblins attending Hogwarts would be that final step too far. They should have been rushing to his door, proclaiming, "Albus, you were right, we need your help." That was never going to happen, though, because once more he had to doff his cap to the goblins. They had handled this entire situation brilliantly. Albus found that article on page 8. That was because the first 7 pages of the Daily Prophet were dedicated to the twins Hermione Crow just gave birth to on the same day a goblin went to Albus' beloved Hogwarts. No one gave a shit about the goblin catastrophe. They were far more interested in their newly born prince and princess. On reading the articles, that's just what it felt like to Albus. They were being treated like royalty, ministers from all over Europe publicly sending them messages of congratulations. She had supposedly given birth to them inside Gringotts, meaning no one could even say for sure if the twins were really their children. The real masterstroke, though, was in selecting their names. Harry claimed they wanted to honor all 3 of their fathers and named their son Barack Daniel Potter. That this baby would one day become Lord Potter had Britain's magical society falling over themselves to congratulate all involved. Since it was well known they had a brother called James and a goddaughter Lily, their daughter was being named Emma Alice Potter, again to much acclaim. These developments would push Albus' plans back a few years. All this positive publicity would again mask what was really going on in the British magical community. The goblins were slowly but surely taking over. They even had Rita Skeeter now running the Prophet. Albus could see it all, however. His walls told him the truth. He was a patient and powerful wizard. The Dementors didn't even affect him now. What those walls didn't show was Albus' reflection. Otherwise, he would perhaps have realized he didn't have those years available. His tongue, lips, and beard were all black, with Dumbledore's skin resembling dried leather, and his eyes were almost continually bloodshot and itchy. The diagnosis was not good. It was a good few years before a visiting healer picked up what was happening here. In licking the back of those articles that were festooned on his cell walls, Dumbledore was ingesting trace amounts of the inks used to print the newspaper. Since these inks contained things you didn't want in your body, predominantly lead, Dumbledore had been slowly but surely poisoning himself. When they stopped delivering his daily paper, the withdrawal symptoms experienced by the prisoner might have been mainly psychological, but they were real nonetheless. A decision had to be quickly made. The effects of the lead were cumulative, and the metal couldn't be flushed from a person's body. They also affected a wizard's mental capacity, and Dumbledore was already badly poisoned. As Dumbledore was going to be here for the rest of his life, and the lead in his system actually protected him from the debilitating Dementor effects, because it was already working on his brain, a decision was reached to let him have his newspapers again. This stopped all the stress that not having his newspapers was causing Albus, and no one really knew whether the immediate high levels of stress or continual slow poisoning was worse for his ancient heart. If Dumbledore really was the Dark Lord of that prophecy, then it could easily be construed that he would eventually die from Harry's hand, since it was him who paid for the daily Prophet subscription. It was also decided at ministerial level never to tell Harry about this. He had already rid them from one Dark Lord. Albus Dumbledore was now drifting deeper and deeper into his own fantasy world, somewhere not even the Dementors could reach. He was a thin and wizened old man who rattled about in his cell, one who was not long for this world. When an inmate died in prison, they were buried on the island. One thing was certain, Albus Dumbledore was never leaving Azkaban. This would be his home and final resting place. They had reserved him the space next to Dolores Umbridge, who passed away last year with barely half her sentence completed. It took determination and belief to survive a stint in Azkaban. Umbridge had neither and slowly wasted away. She, like Dumbledore, would neither be missed nor mourned. As all three were soon given a clean bill of health, Hermione couldn't wait to get out of the medical facility. She and Harry each had a baby cradled in one arm while their free hands were joined. Time to go home, love. The rest of our family will be waiting for us. With that, it was a very happy family of four who portkeyed home to Crow's Nest. The end. And thank you so much for reading and supporting this story.